After inheriting a billion-dollar fortune, my scumbag ex-husband begged me to reconcile. 3 years ago, she gave up her family fortune worth hundreds of billions and disguised herself as a bride for a happy occasion because she was infatuated with Zhou Yibai. 3 years later, she was framed and accused of murder. She was wounded all over, but he gave her a divorce agreement and kicked her out of the house. She resolutely resumed her status as a young lady and paid back everything she owed. Chapter 1, Framed by the White Lotus. In the Imperial City, at the Yibai Villa area, the Zhou family. Today is the 70th birthday of old Madame Zhou, and the place is filled with guests. At this moment, at the left side of the staircase, a sudden scream pierced through the noisy hall. A heavily pregnant woman tumbled down the stairs. The crowd gasped and immediately surrounded her. Old Madame Zhou, leaning on a cane, rushed forward. "Swear, what happened?" The woman, blood flowing heavily between her legs, had a pale face, her expression full of pain as she pointed at the woman standing on the stairs. "Grandmother, it's Chi-Chi, it hurts so much, my baby, my baby." Her heartbreaking voice made old Madame Zhou panic. "Call the ambulance, quickly. Chi-Chi, how dare you harm our Che's only child?" Old Madame Zhou angrily struck the floor with her cane, pointing at the woman standing at the top of the stairs, her face covered in scars. Everyone looked up, realizing that it was Zhou family's third young mistress, a woman dressed simply, with messy hair, yet unable to hide her disfigured face. The people of the Imperial City knew that when Zhou family's third young master was critically ill, the doctors said he wouldn't last more than a month. Old Madame Zhou, who believed in fortune-telling, hired a master who said the person who could save Zhou Yibai was a woman with scars all over her face. Old Madame Zhou spent a fortune to find her, and within 2 days, she found Chi-Chi, a nameless beggar. The name, Chi-Chi, was given by old Madame Zhou herself. Strangely, after Chi-Chi married Zhou Yibai, he woke up that very night. Old Madame Zhou was grateful to her and treated her well. However, today, Chi-Chi had pushed Zhou family's young mistress down the stairs, and this was Zhou family's eldest son's only child. 3 months ago, Zhou Yibai died in a car accident, leaving behind a 3-month pregnant wife, Bai Shui. Old Madame Zhou had taken great care of Bai Shui, hoping that the child of the eldest son would be born. But now, it was clear the child was lost. "I didn't." The crowd whispered, accusing the woman of being cold-blooded. Chi-Chi, being blamed by everyone, lowered her eyelids, her ugly face betraying no emotion. Bai Shui, supported by a servant, was pale and weak, trying to calm everyone down. "Grandmother, don't blame Chi-Chi. She just heard those rumors and thought I had an inappropriate relationship with Yibai, so she lost control. Don't blame her." Her words immediately sealed Chi-Chi's guilt. "I didn't push you. You fell on your own." After hearing Bai Shui's misleading words, Chi-Chi looked up at Bai Shui, her voice cold as she explained. This woman, in order to frame her, was willing to give up her life. Shui. A low, deep voice interrupted the moment. Everyone held their breath, looking at the current head of the Zhou family, Zhou Yibai. He rushed to Bai Shui and held her in his arms. "Yibai, don't blame Chi-Chi. She is pitiful, and she saved your life. Don't let her harm your relationship with me." Bai Shui grasped Zhou Yibai's hand, said this with great difficulty, then fainted in his arms. "Why haven't you taken her to the hospital yet?" Chi-Chi stood frozen, staring at Zhou Yibai, her fist slowly tightening. She had never seen Zhou Yibai look so worried. To her, Zhou Yibai was always a calm and composed man, whether in bed or in public, he was always controlled. As expected, the rumors from the servants and the people online were true. Zhou Yibai had always loved his sister-in-law, and she was just a shield. "Take her with you." Zhou Yibai glanced at Chi-Chi coldly before disappearing from her view. Old Madame Zhou, with a cold face, ordered the servants to drag Chi-Chi into the car. Half an hour later, at the hospital, Bai Shui ultimately lost the child. Old Madame Zhou was so angry she shed tears, then pointed at the indifferent Chi-Chi and shouted, "Kneel." "Why should I kneel? I didn't do anything wrong, I won't kneel." Chi-Chi's words were undeniably a challenge to old Madame Zhou. "You?" Old Madame Zhou stomped her cane and turned to Zhou Yibai, furious. "How do you discipline your wife? How dare she talk back to me? Now that you're fine, this woman is useless." Before Chi-Chi could understand old Madame Zhou's meaning, she saw Zhou Yibai approaching her. Chi thought he was going to help her, but instead, the man placed his hand on her shoulder, his tone cold. "Kneel." His strength was immense, and Chi almost knelt to the ground. Her eyes turned red, staring intently at the man in front of her. Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai didn't know that she had fallen for him a long time ago. In order to get close to him, she had intentionally disfigured herself, waiting for the Zhou family to come knocking, all to save Zhou Yibai. Chi clenched her fist, her chin raised high. "It wasn't me." As she spoke, Chi's frail body struggled against Zhou Yibai's force. Zhou Yibai, with a cold face, was about to push her down when Chi slapped him across the face. Zhou Yibai's expression darkened instantly. Old Madame Zhou was about to explode, but just then, Bai Shui's weak voice sounded. "Grandmother, it's my fate, I couldn't keep Archie's child. Don't blame Chi Yibai, after all, she was your wife for 3 years, don't." Zhou Yibai's eyes grew cold. "I don't have such a cruel wife." Hearing this, Chi's body trembled slightly. She knew then that there was no need to explain further. "Chi, take care of yourself." Zhou Yibai walked past her, leaving this sentence behind as he headed towards Bai Shui's hospital bed. Chi's scarred face curved into a bitter smile, watching his departing figure, her fist tightening slowly. Chapter 2, Chi is dead. Lock her in the ancestral hall. She will only be released when she admits her mistake. Old Master Zhu's face was cold as he ordered for Chi to be taken away. 2 bodyguards stepped forward, one on each side, about to grab Chi to leave, but she had already gotten up by herself, her tone indifferent. "No need for trouble, I'll go on my own." As she was leaving, Chi still glanced toward Zhou Yibai. The man had his back to her, comforting Bai Shui, who had just lost her child, and was completely ignoring her. Chi spent the night in the ancestral hall. The room was cold and damp, and she was on the verge of collapse. It felt as though she had been forgotten by everyone. No one came to visit her in the hall. Just when she could barely hold on any longer, Zhou Yibai's cold voice came from behind. "Chi, do you know your mistake now?" "No," Chi answered, her hand trembling violently at her side. "Stubborn." Zhou Yibai's handsome face immediately turned icy. How could she still refuse to admit her mistake at this point? "Zhou Yibai, let's get a divorce." Chi slowly stood up, her black eyes devoid of emotion but strangely serious. Her face, full of scars, flickered before Zhou Yibai's eyes. For a brief moment, he had the illusion that Chi was actually quite beautiful. He composed himself, his eyes flashing with coldness. "Divorce? Are you sure?" She was a beggar with no family. Could she survive without him? Was she planning to go back to begging? Go apologize to Bai Shui. "You're still the 3rd young madam of the Zhou family. I don't care for the title of 3rd young madam anymore. I want to get a divorce now." Chi had thought about it all night, and her heart had turned cold. She had once naively believed that Zhou Yibai had some feelings for her. Now, she realized it was just her self-deception. Zhou Yibai's face remained cold. He glanced at Chi, who looked pale, and then picked up his phone, dialing a number. "Arhua, get my documents ready and prepare the car for the Civil Affairs Bureau." "3rd young master, why are you going to the Civil Affairs Bureau?" "To divorce." He hung up, cast a cold glance at Chi, and turned to head toward the door. Chi watched Zhou Yibai's indifferent back, and tears rolled down her face uncontrollably. She wiped her tears with her hand, took a deep breath, and muttered to herself, "What is there to cry about? He is just a man." After leaving him, she would still be the proud young lady she once was. At this moment, Zhou Yibai walked out of the ancestral hall, his face cold, heading toward the yard. Arhua had already prepared the car and Zhou Yibai's documents. Seeing the man's unfriendly expression, Arhua's heart skipped a beat. He quickly stepped forward, asking carefully, "3rd young master, are you really going to divorce the 3rd young madam? If she wants it, I'll grant it. Let us see how long she can last outside. When she can't manage, she'll come crawling back to me." Zhou Yibai finished speaking, and Chi walked toward him. Her knees were so swollen it was unrecognizable, and every step she took felt like 1,000 needles piercing her. Yet, it seemed like she didn't feel the pain, not even furrowing her brows. "Drive." Once Chi got into the car, Zhou Yibai, expressionless, ordered Arhua to drive. Arhua didn't dare delay and immediately drove them to the Civil Affairs Bureau. The atmosphere in the car was suffocatingly silent, and neither Zhou Yibai nor Chi said a word. Upon arriving at the Civil Affairs Bureau, as the car came to a stop, Zhou Yibai got out first. Seeing his swift movements, Chi sneered. He was so eager. After divorcing her, he could be with Bai Shui, right? He probably couldn't wait to finalize the divorce. The divorce procedures were completed quickly. Chi didn't take a single penny from the Zhou family, and Zhou Yibai didn't give her a cent. Pack her things. No need. I didn't bring anything when I came, and I don't need anything when I leave. As they exited the Civil Affairs Bureau, Zhou Yibai was still giving instructions to Arhua when Chi interrupted him. Zhou Yibai's black eyes grew even colder. Go visit Bai Shui. He walked past Chi and into the car, ordering Arhua. Arhua, with a sympathetic glance at Chi, shook his head and got in the car to leave. Chi stared at the divorce certificate in her hand, forcing a smile. Her legs, racked with pain, carried her toward the bus stop. Halfway there, a black minivan suddenly rammed into Chi. She barely had time to react before the vehicle slammed into her, sending her body flying several meters. Covered in blood, she lay on the ground, her head slightly raised as she looked at the van that was about to hit her again. Chi mustered all her strength and rolled toward the guardrail. Seeing there was no way to hit her, the driver reluctantly drove off. Watching the van drive away, Chi shook her head, pulled out her phone from her pocket, and tremblingly dialed a number she hadn't touched in a long time. At this moment, in the office of the CEO of Mu Group, Mu Qian stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, staring outside in a daze. His phone rang on the desk. He turned to look at it, picked it up, and heard a weak voice on the other end. Big brother, it's Chi. Save me. 15 minutes later, a helicopter hovered where Chi had called from. As Mu Qian stepped out of the helicopter, he saw Chi lying on the ground, covered in blood, and his eyes filled with a layer of red. He staggered forward, carefully picking her up into his arms. Chi. His beloved sister, what had happened during the 3 years she had been missing? Brother, I want to go home. The woman clutched Mu Qian's shirt, her voice weak and soft. Okay, I'll take you home now. Mu Qian held his sister tightly and carried her into the helicopter, flying away. Zhou Yibai, goodbye. Chi leaned against Mu Qian, watching the ground getting farther and farther away, silently saying in her heart. Chi is dead, and the only one alive is the proud daughter of the heavens, Mu Chi. Chapter 3, Chi, where are you hiding? 3 months later. At the Zhou group, Zhou Yibai looked at Arhua, who was standing across from him, with a dark expression. You mean you still haven't found her? Yes, after the third young mistress divorced you, it's like she vanished from the face of the earth. No trace of her can be found. Arhua's words made Zhou Yibai's face even colder. How could a living person just disappear like that? Keep looking. Chi, where are you hiding? Yibai. Arhua nodded and exited Zhou Yibai's office. As he reached the door, he saw Bai Shui coming in to find Zhou Yibai. Bai Shui was dressed up beautifully today. Zhou Yibai looked up and asked, what brings you here? Bai Shui noticed Zhou Yibai's indifferent demeanor. She bit her lip and put on a pitiful expression. Grandmother asked me to come with you to the Earl Ma's banquet. I can go alone. Zhou Yibai seemed to not want to bring Bai Shui with him. Bai Shui bit her lip, her beautiful eyes clouded with a faint mist. Grandmother said you have to bring me along because Lady Ma's will also attend the banquet. If you want to secure the collaboration with Ma's, I can be of help. Zhou Yibai furrowed his brows and said indifferently, fine, I'll come pick you up later. Bai Shui smiled with joy at his words. Then I'll wait for you. At 7 p.m. Zhou Yibai arrived at Earl Ma's banquet with Bai Shui. Their relationship was not a secret in the capital, and their appearance together immediately attracted a lot of attention. Go find Lady Ma's. Zhou Yibai instructed Bai Shui. Okay. Bai Shui had initially wanted to stay with Zhou Yibai a bit longer but didn't dare to upset him. She released Zhou Yibai's arm and turned to find Lady Ma's. Just then, there was a stir by the entrance. It's the eldest daughter of the Mu family. I heard she disappeared 3 years ago and only returned 3 months ago. Not long after, she's going to take over the entire Mu group. But I heard that the eldest daughter of the Mu family was deceived by a man and lost her baby during the 3 years she was missing. The eldest daughter of the Mu family. Bai Shui had heard of the Mu family, the top family in the capital. As the woman walked into everyone's view, all eyes were on her. Her bright red dress, breathtaking beauty, and graceful figure made each of her steps seem like she was walking on air. Bai Shui looked at Mu Chichi with jealousy in her eyes. She was the recognized beauty of the capital, but now there was a woman who was even more beautiful than her, with an even more distinguished status. Bai Shui felt uncomfortable. But as she thought about how Mu Chichi, no matter how noble her status, had still been deceived by a man and suffered a miscarriage, Bai Shui felt a little better. When she turned to look at Zhou Yibai, she saw that he was also looking at Mu Chichi, which made Bai Shui's eyes fill with gloom. Yibai. Bai Shui bit her lip, grabbed Zhou Yibai's arm, and called out to him. Zhou Yibai came back to his senses and looked at Bai Shui, saying, "I'm fine." With that, Zhou Yibai left her and went to talk to others. Bai Shui stared at Zhou Yibai's retreating figure and walked toward Lady Ma's. As she entered, she saw Mu Chichi holding a glass of wine, talking to Lady Ma's. Mu Chichi glanced at Bai Shui with a mocking and sarcastic look. The disdain in her eyes made Bai Shui uncomfortable. Bai Shui forced herself to endure the discomfort and approached Mu Chichi. "Miss Mu, I'm Bai Shui, the third young mistress of the Zhou family. It's an honor to meet you. Lady Ma's, if you're interested in the Highland project, you can sign the contract now." Mu Chichi had come to the banquet specifically for the Highland project, as it was her first business after returning to the Mu family. "I really like the plan you mentioned, Miss Mu. We can sign the contract now," Lady Ma said, admiring Mu Chichi and immediately deciding to sign a contract with her company. Bai Shui's face darkened as she stepped forward and said, "Lady Ma's, our Zhou family is also very sincere about collaborating on the Highland project. Perhaps you could take a look at our. Do you know what the Highland project is?" Mu Chichi raised her chin, her expression cold as she looked at Bai Shui. Bai Shui's face turned pale. She knew nothing about the company's business and had only hoped to help Zhou Yibai secure the Highland project. Household drama is more suited for the third young mistress of the Zhou family. Mu Chichi's eyes flashed with disdain as she handed the prepared contract to Lady Ma's and began signing with her. Bai Shui, humiliated by Mu Chichi, now had a twisted expression on her beautiful face. Her eyes reddened, filled with malice as she glared at Mu Chichi. This woman was ruining her plans. Suddenly, Bai Shui noticed a servant carrying hot water nearby, and an idea formed in her mind. She deliberately walked toward Mu Chichi. As the servant passed by, Bai Shui subtly stuck out her leg, tripping the servant. The servant lost balance, and the hot water splashed directly onto Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi seemed to have anticipated this. With a cold smile, she supported the servant's waist with one hand while grabbing the hot water with the other, and turned it back to splash Bai Shui's chest. R. Bai Shui screamed, her face turning pale with pain as she collapsed onto the ground. Bai Shui. Hearing Bai Shui's cry, Zhou Yibai immediately rushed over. "Yibai, it's not Miss Mu's fault. I don't know how I offended her. She used this method to hurt me." Bai Shui trembled from the pain, leaning weakly against Zhou Yibai, her words laced with accusations against Mu Chichi. The same trick was played again. Mu Chichi couldn't help but cover her face and laugh. "Miss Mu, please apologize to her." Chapter for that woman who doesn't know how to live or die. Zhou Yibai put his coat on Bai Shui, his cold eyes filled with chill. Bai Shui bit her lip and cried with tears in her eyes. There was a lot of discussion around her, all criticizing Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi played with the clothes on her chest and looked up at Zhou Yibai. "Who is she? You want me to apologize to her?" The arrogant words made everyone present gasp in anger, and Zhou Yibai warned with a cold look on his face, "Ms. Mu, since you don't apologize, we can only call the police." Mu Chichi raised her foot, walked closer to Bai Shui, and chuckled, "Then call the police. It happens that I want to sue her." Hiss. The perpetrator wants to sue the victim. What is this operation? Don't be too presumptuous, Miss Mu. Zhou Yibai was wrapped in coldness and looked at Mu Chichi. He actually thought that Mu Chichi was similar to Chuki. He was really out of his mind. "Mrs. Zhou, your heart and your face really don't match." Mu Chichi was playing with her cell phone, her beautiful face full of sneer. After pressing the button, the big screen opposite showed the scene of the servant approaching Mu Chichi with hot water. The scene where Bai Shui tripped the servant made everyone sigh. Bai Shui, who has always been gentle, kind, dignified and decent, would actually do such a despicable thing. No, I didn't. The servant accidentally fell down, and Miss Mu took the opportunity to splash dirty water on me. Bai Shui looked at the big screen and explained with a pale face. Yibai, she wants to harm me. Seeing that everyone had a thoughtful expression, Bai Shui's eyes were red and she choked up as she spoke to the attention Bai. Zhou Yibai didn't look at Bai Shui, but just looked at Mu Chichi and said, turn it off. Wait for the lawyer's letter. Mu Chichi didn't take Zhou Yibai seriously, her beautiful black eyes flashed with coldness. Bai Shui was asking for death, so she naturally wouldn't be polite. Yibai, I didn't, she hurt me. Zhou Yibai stared at Mu Chichi's leaving back with cold eyes and fell into deep thought. Bai Shui, who was standing beside him, tightly grasped Zhou Yibai's arm and sobbed to him. Zhou Yibai turned his head to look at Bai Shui and said in a cold tone, I'll have someone send you back. He has to solve this matter personally. Yibai. When Bai Shui saw Zhou Yibai ignoring her, she stomped her feet in anger. She clenched her fists, her chest was still burning. When she thought of Mu Chichi, she felt so angry that her teeth itched. She wanted her to endure the same humiliation as she did. Mid-party, in the corridor on the second floor. After Mu Chichi finished talking about the project with Maz, a servant handed Mu Chichi a glass of juice when she came out, saying that it was specially prepared for her by Mrs. Maz. It was hard to refuse such a kind invitation, and since they had just started working together, Mu Chichi naturally couldn't refuse. Thank Mrs. Maz for me. After Mu Chichi finished drinking, she handed the cup to the servant and left. The servant watched Mu Chichi leave, walked to an empty area and dialed a number. I have given the juice to Miss Mu as you instructed. However, Mu Chichi, who had just walked halfway, felt uncomfortable all over. She was hot all over, her mind was blurry, and her body was clamoring for a man. Just when she was in great pain, she heard the sound of flushing from the toilet and Mu Chichi staggered towards the toilet. When Zhou Yibai heard the noise behind him, he turned around and was hit on the head with a toilet brush. The man's eyes went dark and he was about to get angry when Mu Chichi acted quickly and viciously and hit the man hard again. Mu Chichi, you are dead. Zhou Yibai's vision became blurred as he yelled at Mu Chichi. Then his eyes went dark and he fell to the ground. Mu Chichi felt hot all over and didn't care about the man's murderous look. She walked forward, dragged the man out of the bathroom with difficulty, found a room at random, closed the door, and pounced directly on the unconscious man on the ground. A few hours later. The dim room was full of messy clothes. The ringing of the cell phone came from among the messy clothes, making Mu Chichi unable to sleep. She frowned, muttered, and reached for her cell phone out of habit, but what she touched was a smooth body. Mu Chichi was frightened awake. The woman stared blankly at the man sleeping beside her. That handsome and arrogant face couldn't be more familiar. Zhou Yibai. The memories of last night flooded into Mu Chichi's mind. She rubbed her swollen and aching forehead and almost exploded. Shit, she actually dared to sleep with Zhou Yibai? She felt like she might be dreaming. Mu Chichi pinched her face hard twice. The pain came over her and she instantly realized that she was not dreaming. The cell phone rang again, interrupting Mu Chichi's thoughts. She wrapped the sheet around her chest, got out of bed, and picked up her phone from the floor. After seeing Lai Xian, Mu Chichi suddenly felt a headache. She didn't go home last night, and her brother must be worried now. Chichi. As soon as the call was connected, Mu Qian's deep and pleasant voice came from the other side of the receiver. Mu Chichi was about to explain why she didn't go home last night when Mu Qian spoke to her with a sigh. Grandpa is very angry. Mu Chichi frowned and asked, is it Mu Weiwei who gossiped in front of Grandpa? Mu Weiwei is Mu Chichi's half-sister. Her mother is a mistress. Both mother and daughter are great actors. They can coax their grandfather into obedience and always frame Mu Chichi in front of old Mu, causing old Mu to dislike Mu Chichi very much. Did you have someone beat up young Master Huang? He wanted to take advantage of me, but I didn't cripple him because of my grandfather's sake. Mu Chichi said with cold eyes. Mr. Huang was the blind date that Mu Chichi met before coming to the banquet. Mr. Mu arranged this for Mu Chichi. The other party wanted to touch Mu Chichi, but was defeated by Mu Chichi. He actually dared to flirt with you. Mu Qian's voice suddenly became cold. Brother, I'll go back and tell you. Mu Chichi turned her head to look at Zhou Yibai, who was showing signs of waking up on the bed, spoke quickly, and hung up the phone. She had to leave before Zhou Yibai woke up. Mu Chichi picked up the clothes on the ground, endured the pain in her waist, quickly put on her clothes, and was about to leave when she thought of what Zhou Yibai had done to her at Zhu's house. The woman's delicate expression turned colder by the second. She walked straight to the bed and looked at the man's handsome face. She raised her hand and slapped the man's face twice. Then she reached into her pocket, took out a coin, threw it directly on the bed and left without looking back. Zhou Yibai, this dollar is my tip to you. 10 minutes later. Zhou Yibai opened his scarlet eyes, he felt a slight pain on his cheek, he stretched out his hand to cover his face, a coin rolled down from the man's body. Zhou Yibai looked at the falling coin, his face instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot. That woman who doesn't know what's good for her. Third master, what's wrong with you? When Arhua found Zhou Yibai, he couldn't help but twitch his eyelids when he saw the slap marks on Zhou Yibai's face and his naked body. What happened to the third young master? Zhou Yibai quickly changed his clothes, growling with a fierce look in his eyes. Go back to Zhu's house. Chapter 5 Threaten Me. The old house of the Mu family. After Mu Chichi returned to their villa and cleaned herself up, she dressed up and drove to the Mu family's old house. Who would have thought that just as she entered the hall, a cup flew towards her. Mu Chichi dodged it nimbly and the cup fell directly to the ground and shattered into pieces. Sister, you are really too reckless. How could you hurt young Master Huang? The Huang family is very angry now. Mu Weiwei's tender and charming voice rang in Mu Chichi's ears. She dusted herself off and raised her eyelids to glance at Mu Weiwei. Mu Weiwei's slender body trembled twice and she didn't dare to speak. The eyes of this little bitch Mu Chichi are becoming more and more sharp and terrifying. Mu Chichi, what do you want to do? Mr. Mu questioned Mu Chichi with a cold face. Grandpa, do you think someone like Huang Xiao is worthy of me? Mu Chichi looked at Mu Lao with a cold expression and asked. Sister, you ran away from home for 3 years. I heard that you were deceived by a man outside. Mr. Huang wanted you because of the face of our entire Mu family. Besides, the Huang family is such a good family, what are you picky about? Mu Weiwei sneered at Mu Chichi with disdain in her eyes. Mu Chichi raised her chin and said calmly, since Mr. Huang is so good, why don't you marry him? Mu Weiwei's face turned stiff in an instant. Sister, I know you don't like me, and I just want you to be happy. If the fact that you were played by a man 3 years ago were to be exposed, how would our Mu family survive in the imperial capital in the future? Mu Weiwei's intention was very clear, which was to let old man Mu know that Mu Chichi had been missing for 3 years and had been deceived by a man. She was no longer worthy of being a member of the Mu family. In order not to bring shame to the entire Mu family, the only way was to find a family to marry Mu Chichi off. If you don't like the Huang family, then let's go to the Li family. The Li family's son is not bad. Grandpa wants to marry me to the paralytic from the Li family. Mu Chichi raised her head and asked Mr. Mu casually. It's good enough that the Li family doesn't dislike you. Stop being picky. Mr. Mu looked at Mu Chichi with disdain. When you have time, learn more from your sister. If you continue to embarrass our Mu family, then... Grandfather. Mu Chichi's black eyes were filled with coldness. She interrupted Mu Lao's words, walked straight towards him and sat opposite him. Seeing that Mu Chichi dared to interrupt old Mu, Mu Weiwei started to act like a demon again. Sister, how can you interrupt Grandpa when he's talking? You are so uneducated. Par. Mu Chichi raised her hand and slapped Mu Weiwei in the face. Mu Chichi, what are you doing? Mu Weiwei covered her beaten face and pointed at Mu Chichi and growled angrily. Mu Chichi narrowed her eyes and sneered, Mu Weiwei, you are the illegitimate daughter of a mistress, and you dare to mention the tutor in front of me. It seems that you have really forgotten who the real legitimate daughter of the Mu family is. Mu Qian is the adopted child of Mu Chichi's mother. In the entire Mu family, Mu Chichi is the only person of pure blood. Mu Weiwei's face turned extremely ugly, and old Mu clenched the cane in his hand, his turbid eyes flashing with a sharp and terrifying cold light. Are you challenging me? Mr. Mu half closed his eyes, his gaze was sharp and terrifying. How could I challenge you, Grandpa? I was just reminding you that I am the heir of the Mu family. In a week, I will officially take over the Mu group. You have never been in charge of the company's affairs, how can you take over? Mu Weiwei's heart sank and she stopped him immediately. Go back and be reborn into a good family, and you will know that there is no reason for many things. Who made me, born nobler than you? Mu Chichi patted his collar and spoke to Mu Weiwei in a tone that was so infuriating that she could not bear the consequences. Then he stood up and bowed to Mr. Mu. If Grandpa is okay, I will go back first. Since young Master Huang is not to your liking, then you should marry into the Zhou family. The third young master of the Zhou family, Zhou Yibai, just got divorced not long ago. I have already discussed the wedding date with old lady Zhou. If you dare to sabotage it this time, don't blame me for being ruthless. Mu Chichi had just walked to the door when she heard what Mr. Jiyu said behind her, and she almost fell to the ground. She clenched her fists and turned to look at Mr. Mu. Impossible. How could she possibly repeat the same mistake and marry Zhou Yibai again? Mu Weiwei pinched her palms and looked at Mu Chichi's leaving back with vicious and ferocious eyes. Why should Mu Chichi marry the third young master of the Zhou family? She had seen the third master and what an outstanding man he was. If he hadn't been terminally ill, he would not have married an ugly girl. After finally divorcing the ugly girl, she thought she had a chance, but who knew that Mr. Mu actually wanted Mu Chichi to marry Zhou Yibai? She would never let Mu Chichi marry into the Zhou family, never. Zhou Yibai returned to the villa, and the housekeeper of the old house hurried over to find Zhou Yibai. Third young master, it's bad. The old lady's old illness has relapsed. Zhou Yibai's face suddenly changed, and he walked past the housekeeper and headed upstairs. On the third floor, in old Mrs. Zhu's bedroom. Old Mrs. Zhu was lying on the bed with a pale face. Bai Shui was sitting beside the bed with tears in her eyes, wiping her tears constantly. When Zhou Yibai walked in, Bai Shui looked delighted and stood up and walked towards Zhou Yibai. But Zhou Yibai didn't even look at her, and just asked the doctor with a serious face, Grandma's old illness relapsed this time, is it very difficult? If we can get the blood ganoderma, the old lady will be able to survive the critical period. Butler, go to the pharmacy and buy some blood ganoderma. Third young master, only the Mu family has the blood ganoderma, and there are only 3 of them. Zhou Yibai frowned, then go to the Mu family to buy it. When Bai Shui heard the word Mu family, she thought of the scene where she was humiliated by Mu Chichi at the banquet. She clenched her fists and a vicious gleam flashed in her eyes. I'm afraid Mu Chichi is now having an affair with some strange man and her reputation has been ruined. So what if she was a rich girl? She didn't believe that the Mu family would just sit back and watch her do such a vile thing with a strange man in public. Arhua immediately took people to the Mu family to buy blood ganoderma lucidum, while Zhou Yibai stayed by the old lady's bedside. The old lady's condition was very bad. She was vomiting blood and having convulsions, which made Zhou Yibai feel very upset. Why haven't you bought it yet? Arhua has been gone for 2 hours and still hasn't bought the blood ganoderma lucidum. The doctor gave the old lady an injection, which may make her feel better. Bai Shui saw Zhou Yibai's impatience, so she bit her lip and said, Yibai, is the Mu family willing to sell the blood ganoderma? Zhou Yibai knew what Bai Shui meant. Thinking of the scene where he was humiliated and pressed down by Mu Chichi, the man felt cold all over. He said coldly, if the price is high enough, I'm not afraid she won't sell it. Jingle. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Yibai's phone rang. The man took a look and saw that it was Arhua. He immediately picked up the phone and answered it. Third master, the Mu family won't sell it. How much do you charge? From 1 million to 10 million, and then to 50 million. This is already a sky-high price for ganoderma lucidum. If the old lady didn't need ganoderma lucidum now, Arhua wouldn't have offered such a high price. Unfortunately, the Mu family refused to sell it. Then keep adding. The eldest lady of the Mu family said she would never sell it. Arhua said embarrassedly. Zhu Yi's black phoenix eyes flashed with coldness. He hung up the phone, looked at the doctor and said, take good care of the old lady. Yibai, where are you going? When Bai Shui saw Zhou Yibai was about to leave, she hurriedly chased after him. Zhou Yibai looked at Bai Shui and ordered in a cold tone, take good care of Grandma. Bai Shui pinched her palms and looked at Zhou Yibai's back with a cold look in her eyes. She must find a way to get pregnant with Zhou Yibai's child as soon as possible and marry him. Chuki had already been driven away by her, and she would never let Zhou Yibai marry another woman. Mu Chichi was leaning on the sofa playing with a walnut in her hand. Mu Qian walked downstairs and took the walnuts from Mu Chichi's hand. Chichi, Grandpa is very dissatisfied with you. When has he ever been satisfied with me? Mu Chichi raised her eyelids and said to Mu Qian. Mu Weiwei and her mother are so capable that they made old Mu so confused that he didn't know which way to go. Mr. Mu only dislikes Mu Chichi. If it weren't for the fact that she was the heir of the Mu family, Mr. Mu would have kicked Mu Chichi out of the Mu family. Grandpa is the superior after all. You should be obedient in front of him. Otherwise, Mu Weiwei and her daughter will take advantage of you. Then, you will be in the Mu family. Bang. As soon as Mu Qian finished speaking, a loud noise was heard from the yard. Mu Qian frowned. What's going on? Mu Chichi clenched the walnut in her hand, stood up and walked towards the door. Just as she reached the door, the panicked housekeeper came over and stammered, Miss, it's bad. Someone broke in. Chapter 6. She will teach Zhou Yibai to behave well. Which fool dares to come here? Mu Chichi asked with coldness in her black almond-shaped eyes. Yes. The third young master of the Zhou family broke in with his men and injured the security guard at the gate. Zhou Yibai? Mu Chichi's pretty face suddenly turned a little cold. I'll go meet him. Mu Chichi walked past the housekeeper and headed towards the yard. The yard was in a mess. Several bodyguards were injured and lay on the ground, barely able to get up. Mu Chichi looked at the bodyguard wailing on the ground, picked up the walnut in her hand and threw it at Zhou Yibai's face. When she was a child, she often used walnuts as darts and she was very accurate. But the walnut did not hit Zhou Yibai's face, and the man avoided the flying walnut. He raised his cold chin and looked at Mu Chichi with his phoenix eyes. It's really hard to meet Miss Mu. Do you think I am someone you can see whenever you want? Mr. Zhu-san, who do you think you are? Mu Chichi raised her face proudly and spoke with contempt. Zhou Yibai was also a proud and arrogant man, so how could he tolerate Mu Chichi humiliating him like this? Miss Mu, do you want everyone in the capital to know about our affair? Zhou Yibai raised his legs straight, walked closer to Mu Chichi, put his handsome face against Mu Chichi, and gave her a sharp warning look. The man's approach made Mu Chichi's breathing disordered. She pinched her palms and pretended to be calm and said, Are you threatening me? I just want the blood Ganoderma to save my grandma. You can name any price you want. As for your rudeness to me, I won't pursue it. Zhou Yibai straightened up, brushed his forehead with his slender fingers, and spoke in a cold voice. Mu Chichi's sight was attracted by Zhou Yibai's ring finger. The moment the man raised his hand, Mu Chichi saw the ring on his ring finger. She didn't expect that Zhou Yibai was still wearing her wedding ring. She thought that Zhou Yibai had thrown away the ring long ago. Ms. Mu. Seeing the woman standing in front of him in a daze, Zhou Yi's white and black phoenix eyes turned a little colder. Mu Chichi was awakened by Zhou Yibai's cold voice. She gathered her thoughts and looked at Zhou Yibai. There are only 3 blood Ganoderma. One was used in previous years, and the whereabouts of another is unknown. The last one is the treasure of our Mu's pharmacy. Young Master Zhu-san brought his men into our Mu family, beat up my people, and still wanted to negotiate with me. This is too much of a bully. I won't sell you the blood Ganoderma. You better take care of the people you hurt, or I'll make you pay. Mu Chichi's dark and bright almond-shaped eyes shot towards Zhou Yibai with coldness. Zhou Yibai stared at the woman in front of him. Why did he always see the shadow of Chuki in Mu Chichi? They are obviously 2 different people. I will pay for all the medical expenses. I will give you whatever amount of money Miss Mu wants. Mu Chichi had never heard Zhou Yibai speak to others in such a pleading tone. In her impression, Zhou Yibai has always been a superior being. It was like she had been married to Zhou Yibai for so many years, disguised herself for him, and even wanted to give up her position as the heir to the Mu family to become his wife, but he had never taken her to heart. Those painful memories filled Mu Chichi's heart with hatred. Zhou Yibai felt Mu Chichi's sudden hatred. The man looked at Mu Chichi, with a strange and serious look in his eyes. Is third master deaf at such a young age? I just said I won't sell it. Mu Chichi said with a cold face. Zhou Yibai's face darkened, and suddenly he attacked Mu Chichi, with the knife in his hand against her neck. Mu Chichi looked down at the knife against her neck, a layer of gloom covering her pretty face. The bodyguards standing by were so frightened when they saw Zhou Yibai attacking Mu Chichi that they turned pale. Miss. I don't want to hurt you, I just want to buy the blood Ganoderma. Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi with a stern face and spoke in a serious tone. If third young master hurts Chichi, the Mu family and the Zhou family will inevitably go to war. The Mu family's status in the imperial capital is no less than that of the Zhou family. Third young master should think carefully before taking action. Mu Qian's majestic and cold voice sounded at this time. Zhou Yibai released his hand that was on Mu Chichi's neck and looked at Mu Qian, who was slowly walking towards him. I just want to buy blood Ganoderma. I hope Mr. Mu can sell it to me. As for the price, you can name it. The third young master really wants the blood Ganoderma. Mu Chichi looked at Zhou Yibai and asked with a hint of coldness on her lips. Zhou Yibai said calmly, as long as the Mu family can give me the blood Ganoderma, I will agree to any conditions. Will you agree to all the conditions? Mu Chichi raised her chin, stared at Zhou Yibai's handsome face and said, okay, since third young master is so sincere, I can sell the blood Ganoderma to you. Chichi. Mu Qian frowned and looked at Mu Chichi. Could it be that Chichi hasn't been hurt enough and is soft-hearted towards Zhou Yibai? Our Mu family is not short of money. If third young master can agree to my conditions, I can give you the blood Ganoderma. She blew on her fingernails and looked at Zhou Yibai with a smile. Please go ahead. As long as Mu Chichi is willing to give him the blood Ganoderma, he will agree to all of Mu Chichi's conditions. The third young master has been my servant for 3 months. Mu Chichi remembered clearly the suffering she had endured in the Zhou family. It's not too much to ask Zhou Yibai to be her servant now. Mu Chichi, you are looking for death. Zhou Yibai pinched his palms, trying his best to suppress the anger surging in his chest. If you can't accept it, get out. Mu Chichi glanced at Zhou Yibai and said with sharp and cold eyes. 1 month. The air seemed to be covered with ice, and everyone shivered from the cold. Just when everyone thought Zhou Yibai would be furious, the man uttered 3 words with a sullen face. Mu Chichi held her forehead with her hand. Okay, 1 month is enough. After all, Zhou Yibai is the third young master of the Zhou family, and Mu Chichi doesn't want to cause unnecessary trouble for the Mu family. But, in this month, she will make Zhou Yibai behave himself. Mu Chichi quickly prepared a contract of sale and gave it to Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai looked at the agreement in front of him with a dark face. The 3 words, selling one's body indenture, were particularly eye-catching, and the man's handsome face twitched violently. Sign it, third master. Mu Chichi threw a pen to Zhou Yibai and gave him instructions. Zhou Yibai had a cold face and signed his name neatly. Blood Ganoderma. When Hua, who was standing behind him, saw Zhou Yibai signing, he felt a chill on his back. Third young master, are you just going to endure this? Give it to him. Mu Chichi asked Mu Qian to give the blood Ganoderma lucidum to Zhou Yibai. Although Mu Qian more didn't know what Mu Chichi wanted to do, he still followed Mu Chichi's instructions and handed the blood Ganoderma lucidum to Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai held the blood Ganoderma lucidum in his hand and was about to leave when he was stopped by Mu Chichi. Young Master San is leaving just like that. Anything else? Zhou Yibai frowned and looked at Mu Chichi and asked. The moment third young master signed the contract, you became my servant. I didn't let you leave, so how dare you leave? Zhou Yibai's handsome face suddenly turned gloomy. Third master. Hua swallowed and called Zhou Yibai in a low voice. Zhou Yibai retracted his gaze and handed the blood Ganoderma lucidum in his hand to Hua. Send it back. Yes. Zhou Yibai always keeps his word. Since he said he would be Mu Chichi's servant for a month, he would not go back on his word. I'm hungry, go cook for me right now. Mu Chichi pointed to the kitchen and told Zhou Yibai to cook for her. She once made soup for Zhou Yibai at Zhou's house, working hard without complaint but ended up being a joke. Now Mu Chichi also wants him to experience the feeling of having his self-esteem trampled underfoot. Miss Mu dares to eat the food I cooked. Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi with a gloomy and scary face and asked. If the third young master dares to play any tricks, I will not be polite. A servant should still behave like a servant. After Mu Chichi finished speaking, she stood up and walked upstairs. Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi's back, and his eyes darkened. Her back looks very much like Chuki's. Mu Qian glanced at Zhou Yibai and said in a cold voice, Third young master, you'd better not make Chichi angry. Zhou Yibai's expression became more and more terrifying. He scowled and walked towards the kitchen. You want to eat the food he cooks, right? He helps Mu Chichi. Chapter 7. Why did this woman suddenly blush? Mu Qian went upstairs to Mu Chichi's room. After closing the door, he asked Mu Chichi, Chichi, do you still love him? Mu Qian wished he could tear Zhou Yibai into pieces. When he thought of what Zhou Yibai had done to Mu Chichi, he felt disgusted with Zhou Yibai. No. Her love for Zhou Yibai had long been ruined by him. Brother, I suppressed all my pride and self-esteem, disguised myself as an ugly bride for him, and stayed with him for 5 years, washing hands and eating soup every day, but he trampled my sincerity under his feet. Now I am just returning the favor by making him work like a cow and a horse for me for only 1 month. You broke his self-esteem. I'm afraid he will retaliate against you later. I'm not afraid. If Zhou Yibai dares to retaliate, she will make him regret it. By the way, I found evidence of you being framed by Bai Shui. Any evidence? Mu Chichi's dark eyes turned cold. She is also a vengeful person. Bai Shui harmed her, so she naturally won't let Bai Shui have an easy time. My people got a video from the Zhou family's servants. They recorded the whole process of Bai Shui framing you. After Mu Qian finished speaking, he handed the video to Mu Chichi. After Mu Chichi clicked on the video and watched it, her eyes were cold. Bai Shui probably didn't realize that someone was taking pictures of her as evidence. Do you need me to put it online? Bai Shui caused Mu Chichi to bear the infamy and be cyberbullied, and Mu Qian also wanted to use this method to make Bai Shui look bad. Mu Chichi touched his chin and said with a cold look in his eyes, hold still for now. She has to plan carefully and make Snow White fall from heaven to hell. This is her ultimate revenge. I'll do whatever you say. Brother, please follow up on the Nanshui project. Mu Chichi is now about to take over the company's affairs and will definitely encounter many obstacles. Although she is the legitimate heir, she has never been involved in the company's affairs, and all of them were left to Mu Qian. Mu Weiwei's reputation in the company is higher than Mu Chichi's, and the position that Mr. Mu arranged for Mu Weiwei is a core position in the entire company. Mu Weiwei and her daughter would definitely not let Mu Chichi take over the entire Mu group so smoothly. I know that if Mu Weiwei and the others dare to play dirty tricks, I will definitely make them pay. Once I am firmly in the position of president, I will kick her out of the Mu group. Mu Chichi's dark eyes turned a little colder. She has always been suspicious about her mother's death, but she has no evidence. However, Mu Chichi intuitively feels that it is related to Mu Weiwei and the others. The food is ready. Mu Qian touched Mu Chichi's hair and was about to say something when Sai Yijue's deep and pleasant voice came from the door. Mu Chichi said coldly, bring it in. Zhou Yibai, who was standing at the door, listened to the woman's commanding tone and his eyes grew colder. He restrained his anger, pushed the door open, and saw Mu Qian was there too. He put down the food with a cold face, and was about to leave when Mu Chichi called him. I'll let you leave. Ms. Mu, please give yourself a way out and don't go too far. Zhou Yibai turned his head to look at Mu Chichi and warned her in a cold voice. Mu Chichi said playfully, could it be that Mr. Zhou can't afford to play? Zhou Yibai's handsome face darkened, a creepy chill surged around his body, and he rolled directly towards Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi ignored him, supporting her chin with one hand, and looked at Zhou Yibai with ridicule and contempt in her black eyes. Zhou Yibai clenched his fists and asked in a cold tone, Miss Mu, do you have any other instructions? Can't you stand this? But she was in the Zhou family, and for Zhou Yibai, no matter how Bai Shui and old lady Zhou made things difficult for her, she endured it, just because she didn't want to cause trouble for Zhou Yibai. Go and help me clean the bathroom, especially the bathtub. Clean it for me and then run hot water. I want to take a bath. Zhou Yibai walked towards the bathroom with a gloomy look on his face. Chichi, is this too much? After all, Zhou Yibai is old lady Zhou's most valued heir, and will inherit the entire Zhou family in the future. Mu Chichi humiliated him like this. What if he plays tricks on Mu Chichi to harm her? Brother, I know my limits. Besides, he brought this upon himself. Mu Chichi felt very uncomfortable because she didn't torture Zhou Yibai properly. Mu Qian looked at the expression on Mu Chichi's face with a doting look on his face. It's up to you. If he dares to do something to you, I won't let him go. As soon as Mu Qian finished speaking, his cell phone rang. He apologized to Mu Chichi and stepped aside to answer the call. Mu Chichi looked towards the bathroom, where Zhou Yibai was clumsily wiping the bathtub. and what he held in his hand. Zhou Yibai, what are you holding in your hand? Rag. Zhou Yibai responded in a cold voice. What rag? That's my. Muchichi's face turned red with anger. That was a foreign brand of underwear bought by Muchichi. However, this piece of underwear is quite special. It doesn't look like underwear at all. She put it on last night and threw it next to the bathtub. Who would have thought that Zhou Yibai would actually use it to clean the bathtub? Thinking that Zhou Yibai was holding her most intimate and private thing in his hand, Muchichi's heart beat particularly violently for some reason, and her cheeks became so hot that they were almost engorged with blood. You're what? Zhou Yibai clenched the rag in his hand and asked with doubt in his phoenix eyes. Why did this woman suddenly blush? Get out of here. Muchichi stood up from the chair and walked towards Zhou Yibai with a ferocious look. She snatched the underwear from Zhou Yibai's hand, pointed at the door and told Zhou Yibai to leave immediately. Zhou Yibai said coldly, Muchichi, it will not do you any good to make me angry. What? Are you showing off in front of me? Do you think my Mu family is afraid of your Zhou family? Muchichi ignored Zhou Yibai's warning, raised a cold smile at the corner of her mouth, and sneered at Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai said calmly, Miss Mu has never been involved in the business world. It will be difficult for her to take charge of the business this time. I would like to see how Miss Mu plans to win over the old shareholders of the Mu Group. Muchichi's pretty face darkened. She clenched her fist and was about to hit Zhou Yibai in the face when Mu Qian came over and said in a serious tone, Chichi, our company's computers have been hacked, and a lot of business secrets are about to be leaked. Who did it? I haven't found anything yet. I have to go to the company to deal with it now. If a large number of business secrets were leaked, the crisis faced by the Mu Group would be unprecedented. If not handled properly, Muchichi might be kicked out of the Mu family. This crisis is obviously aimed at Muchichi. I'll go with you. Since she wants to sit in this position, she must have the ability and means to deal with crises. Please, Third Master, drive me and my brother to the Mu Group. When Zhou Yibai heard Mu Qian say this, a dark light flashed in his eyes. The crisis of the Mu Group is a good thing for the Zhou Group. Chapter 8. Tell me, what are your conditions? He was just about to go back and prepare to acquire some projects of the Mu Group when he was stopped by Muchichi. She has been Zhou Yibai's wife for so many years. How could Muchichi not know what Zhou Yibai is thinking? He wants to take advantage of the situation to rob, but he can only dream about it. Young Master San should not set his sights on our Mu Group. It was just hacked, and the business secrets have not been leaked. I will naturally solve this problem quickly. Muchichi walked closer to Zhou Yibai and said with indifference on her pretty face. The faint fragrance of the woman drifted into Zhou Yibai's nose, and his breathing suddenly became rapid. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Muchichi's pretty face, with a misty look in his eyes. This taste. Zhou Yibai couldn't help but reach out to Muchichi, grab her chin, and put his handsome face close to Muchichi. After all, they have been married for 5 years, they have slept in the same bed for many years, and have had intimate relations countless times. Naturally, he recognizes the taste of the seventh day. Zhou Yibai, you dare to act like a hooligan in front of me. Muchichi was angered by the man's sudden action. Before Mu Qian could make a move, she raised her hand and slapped Zhou Yibai. The woman hit the man very hard, and a red slap mark immediately appeared on the man's handsome face, which looked very funny. Zhou Yibai's eyes suddenly turned cold. He grabbed Muchichi's wrist and pressed her into his arms. Muchichi, you are too presumptuous. Before you take action, third young master, you'd better think clearly about where this place is. Mu Qian grabbed Zhou Yibai's arm and warned him with a cold look. Zhou Yibai let go of Muchichi and said in a cold voice, Ms. Mu, you'd better not do anything that makes me angry. So what if you're angry? Do you want to kill me? Muchichi shook her red wrist with a look of disdain. Miss Mu, would you like to enjoy the video of you underneath me that night? This was the first time Zhou Yibai met a woman like Muchichi who dared to challenge him. The corners of his mouth suddenly curled up evilly. He pressed his whole body close to Muchichi and asked in a charming and seductive voice. I thought Muchichi would be frightened, but who would have thought that Muchichi would grab Zhou Yibai's chin, pat the handsome face and say with a smile, I should be the one to say this. Do you want to see the scene of me knocking you out and dragging you to the bed? I think netizens online would like to see it. People from your Zhou family should want to see it too, right? I wonder if old Lady Zhou and your white moonlight, the eldest young lady of the Zhou family, will faint after seeing it. This woman. Zhou Yibai's handsome face turned red, and the coldness around his body seemed to freeze Mu Chichi to death. Third young master, you still have to learn how to be a servant. Otherwise, the entire Zhou family will have to pay the penalty. Do you want your beloved to become a beggar? The man frowned slightly and said nothing. Hurry up and get in the car and take us to the company. Seeing the murderous look on the man's face, Mu Chichi pretended not to see it and gave orders to Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai was bound by the contract and could only hold his breath, sit in the driver's seat, and step hard on the accelerator. Mu Chichi didn't sit steadily and hit her head against the window. Mu Qian's gentle face suddenly turned cold. When he was about to lecture Zhou Yibai, Mu Chichi stopped him. Brother, I'm fine. Someone can't beat me, so he can only step on the accelerator to vent his anger. We need to be extremely caring towards such people, after all, they are a vulnerable group. Mu Chichi's words made Zhou Yibai's face turn sour. He really wanted to tear the steering wheel off and put it on Mu Chichi's head. When the contract ends, he will teach Mu Chichi a lesson. Mu Chichi saw through the man's thoughts. She touched her chin with a sneer on her pretty face. She is not afraid of Zhou Yibai's revenge. If he dared to retaliate, she would make Zhou Yi bleed in vain. Half an hour later, Mu Group. Zhou Yibai originally thought that he could return to the Zhou family after sending Mu Chichi to the company. As a result, Mu Chichi asked her to follow, and Zhou Yibai would be responsible for serving tea and water. Just as he was about to lose his temper, Mu Chichi reminded him coldly, "Third master, don't forget our contract. It's only the first day, can't you bear it? If you can't keep your word, then you have to hand over the Zhou family to me with both hands." Zhou Yibai's handsome face darkened. "Follow me." Seeing that the man was not talking, Mu Chichi gave the order in a cold tone. Zhou Yibai tightened his face and followed behind Mu Chichi. 3 minutes later, in Mu Qian's office. The head of the technical department was already waiting for Mu Qian and the others in the office. When the person in charge saw Zhou Yibai following behind the two men, he was obviously stunned. Mu Chichi asked coldly, "Can it be lifted?" "I have tried my best, but I'm sorry, I'm not capable enough, so." The person in charge turned pale and broke out in a cold sweat as he explained to Mu Chichi. "So you're trying to tell me that it can't be solved? The people in the technical department are all returnees from overseas, and they were hired at high prices, but they only have this kind of ability. Brother, let me give it a try." Since they were useless, Mu Chichi had to do it herself. "Good." Mu Qian looked at Mu Chichi with a doting expression and handed the computer to Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi looked at the code above and began to work attentively. Mu Chichi doesn't like to be disturbed when she is working. Mu Qian looked at Zhou Yibai and said, "You go out first, third young master." Zhou Yibai didn't move, his black phoenix eyes fell on Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi's fingers tapped on the keyboard very flexibly. This woman is quite capable. Beep, beep, beep. As soon as Mu Qian finished speaking, the alarm sounded, which was a warning that hackers were breaking through the last line of defense. Mu Qian's face was solemn, while Mu Chichi had cold sweat on his forehead. She couldn't overcome it. Mu Chichi has always been confident in his hacking skills, but now, he has failed. Now your computer only has one layer of protection system left, and it will be attacked soon. Then all your company's files will be leaked. I don't know what kind of impact the Mu Group will encounter. Zhou Yibai said indifferently. Third master, do you have a solution? Mu Qian looked at Zhou Yibai and asked. If Zhou Yibai can resolve the danger facing the Mu Group this time, Mu Qian might be a little more pleasing to him. Nature. Mu Chichi stood up and looked at Zhou Yibai. You come. Ms. Mu, I am not an employee of your Mu Group. The contract between me and you is just the work standard of a servant. Tell me, what are your conditions? She must handle this matter well, otherwise she will be kicked out of the Mu Group, and even her status as heir will be greatly affected. Chapter 9. Don't bother me. Zhou Yibai said coldly, the contract is terminated. What a good calculation. Do you think I'd agree? If you don't agree, then wait for accountability. There's more than one person in the Mu family, right? I heard you have a younger sister. Blood Ganoderma will release poison after being cooked. The poison must be removed before it can be eaten. I'm afraid the third young master's doctor doesn't know how to eat blood Ganoderma. If I don't tell you how to remove the poison, old lady Zhou. Muchichi. Zhou Yibai thought he had a sure win, but who knew Muchichi would be so cruel? Third master still has time to think about it. Muchichi looked at the computer with her back straight. If Zhou Yibai doesn't hurry up, something serious is going to happen. I really underestimated you. Zhou Yibai said coldly, then sat in the seat where Muchichi had just sat, and began typing on the keyboard with his slender fingers. The man's handsome face was exceptionally stern. Muchichi's eyes fell on Zhou Yibai's profile, and she felt an inexplicable pain in her heart. She once really loved Zhou Yibai. However, Muchichi's love burned herself. Chichi. Mu Qian had been observing Muchichi. When he saw Muchichi looking at Zhou Yibai with such a sad expression, Mu Qian's heart ached. Is she still in love with Zhou Yibai? Zhou Yibai doesn't even recognize his own wife. It's better not to have a man like this. Brother, I'm fine. Muchichi calmed down and said to Mu Qian. Mu Qian has doted on Muchichi since she was a child. No matter what Muchichi does, Mu Qian will support her unconditionally. Mu Qian curled his lips and was about to speak when Zhou Yibai had already defeated the hacker and protected all the computers of the Mu group. All right. Zhou Yibai stood up and said coldly. Muchichi looked over and saw that all the computers had indeed been restored. She has been Zhou Yibai's wife for so long, she never knew that Zhou Yibai was so powerful. What you promised me. Go to Zhou's house with you and I'll show you in person. Muchichi did not lie to Zhou Yibai. The poison in the blood Ganoderma needs to be removed before consumption. She originally wanted to tell Zhou Yibai that this was not a company problem. Muchichi could also use the poison of the blood Ganoderma to make Zhou Yibai work for her. After all the calculations, Muchichi still made a profit. Brother, call Grandpa and tell him that the company's crisis has been resolved and that he doesn't need to worry. Good. When walking out with Zhou Yibai, Muchichi's high heels suddenly broke, and she fell on Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai looked at Muchichi, who threw herself on him and reached out to hug her waist. Muchichi's lips hit the man's neck directly, and her hot and humid breath made Zhou Yibai's body suddenly tense. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Muchichi pushed Zhou Yibai away, suppressed her confused heart, and apologized to Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai's face showed no emotion, and he said in a cold tone, "Let's go, don't play tricks." Zhou Yibai's tone really made Muchichi feel unhappy. She raised her chin and said in a cold and arrogant tone, "Third master, you'd better be polite when talking to me." Zhou Yibai's handsome face darkened instantly, and Muchichi was about to leave when she saw that her shoes were broken. She bent down, took off her shoes, threw them into the trash can beside her, and asked Zhou Yibai to give her his shoes. Ms. Mu, you can't wear my shoes. I have no shoes to wear now. As my servant, isn't it your job to give me shoes to wear? There was a hint of coldness on Muchichi's pretty face, and she asked Zhou Yibai in a bad tone. The word servant made Zhou Yibai's face gloomy. He looked at Muchichi, and his sharp gaze seemed to torture Muchichi to death. Muchichi was not afraid at all, instead she looked at Zhou Yibai. After a moment, Zhou Yibai walked towards Muchichi. She thought the man was furious and wanted to hit her. Muchichi put her hands in her pockets. She always carried a knife for self-defense. If Zhou Yibai dared to be violent to her, Muchichi would never let Zhou Yibai go. Just when Muchichi was wary of Zhou Yibai using violence against her, the man simply picked Muchichi up. Muchichi's whole body stiffened. She raised her foot and wanted to kick Zhou Yibai, but a man's hoarse and cold voice came to her ears. You'd better not move, Muchichi. Muchichi's pretty face was filled with anger. The man's chest was warm and solid, and his aura struck Muchichi's nerves. Her tense body slowly relaxed and she leaned into Zhou Yibai's arms. Zhou Yibai, we've been married for 3 years, and yet you don't recognize me at all. Muchichi raised her head, and a trace of contempt and ridicule flashed across her black eyes as she looked at Zhou Yibai's delicate and beautiful chin. The man's ruthlessness tortured Muchichi's nerves all the time. She held her breath, unable to vent it, and finally opened her mouth and bit Zhou Yibai's neck. Zhou Yibai felt a pain in his neck. With a gloomy face, he looked at Muchichi, who was biting his neck and refused to let go. Loosen your mouth. Is this woman born in the year of the dog? He saved her from having to walk barefoot, but she actually bit him. Zhou Yibai, you are the biggest bastard in the world. People like you should live out your life alone. Not only did Muchichi not give in, she also cursed Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai's handsome face was full of black lines. He walked to the car, opened the door, and threw Muchichi directly into the car. Muchichi hit her head on the seat and grimaced in pain. Zhou Yibai, don't forget the 1-month agreement. This is not your Mu family villa. The indenture is invalid. Muchichi. After Zhou Yibai closed the door heavily, he took Muchichi to Zhu's house. Muchichi was sulking the whole way, her ankle was hurting a lot, probably because she had just sprained it. She endured it and didn't cry out in pain. When the car arrived at Zhu's house, Zhou Yibai parked the car and opened the door, but so that Muchichi did not get out of the car. He thought Muchichi was playing tricks, and when he was about to say something, he saw Muchichi's red and swollen legs and tears flashing in her eyes. What are you doing? When Muchichi was thinking about how to get off the car, she saw Zhou Yibai reaching out his hand towards her. Muchichi protected her chest with her hands, as if Zhou Yibai was going to hurt her. Zhou Yibai looked at Muchichi's actions, his face twitched twice, and he said in a cold tone, "Don't you want your legs anymore?" "Never mind." When Muchichi heard this, a feeling of grievance surged in her heart. She clenched her fists and shouted angrily at Zhou Yibai. Chapter 10 Miss Mu, did you do this on purpose? The woman's angry words reminded Zhou Yibai of the 7th day of the first lunar month. He shook his head and, ignoring Muchichi's resistance, held the woman in his arms. "Zhou Yibai, you bastard." Muchichi kicked Zhou Yibai's body and yelled at him. "Shut up. If you yell again, I'll throw you into the lotus pond." Zhou Yibai's eardrums were pierced by the woman's sharp voice. He narrowed his eyes and warned Muchichi. Muchichi's face was frozen, and she said fiercely, "If you dare to throw me into the lotus pond, I will kill Bai Shui." Isn't he Bai Shui his favorite? She poked Zhou Yibai's heart. Zhou Yibai narrowed his eyes dangerously, but Bai Shui's voice broke the stiff atmosphere between them. "Yibai, come back. Why is Miss Mu here?" Bai Shui originally had a smile on her face, but after seeing Muchichi being held in Zhou Yibai's arms, she felt dissatisfied. "Why is Muchichi here?" Zhou Yibai said coldly, "Call the doctor over." "Good." When she saw Muchichi, she thought of the embarrassing thing that happened to her at the banquet, and she couldn't help but feel hatred rushing towards Muchichi. Muchichi is not a fool. How could she not feel Bai Shui's strong hatred? She deliberately hooked Zhou Yibai's neck, put her lips against Zhou Yibai, and looked at Bai Shui with provocation in her eyes. Bai Shui's eyes turned red due to the stimulation. Seeing that she was so angry, Muchichi licked the corner of Zhou Yibai's lips and said, "The third young master tastes even better than last time. Muchichi, touch me again and I'll crush your neck." Zhou Yibai looked at Muchichi, who suddenly had a seizure, and slapped the woman's face away. Muchichi put her red lips against Zhou Yibai's ear. "Third young master, do you still want to remove the poison from the blood Ganoderma? Or do you want old lady Zhu to continue to suffer? You'd better not be so arrogant." "I'm sorry, I'm used to being arrogant, and no one can stop me." Muchichi grinned, but her pupils were cold. This villa brought Muchichi nothing but endless pain. Entering again at this time and seeing familiar people and things, Muchichi couldn't restrain the hatred and disgust in his heart. She told herself that she was Muchichi now, not Chuki. What you owe her must be repaid eventually. Bai Shui stood not far away and watched Zhou Yibai carrying Muchichi away. She stomped her feet in hatred. 10 minutes later, in Zhu family hall. The doctor is correcting Muchichi's dislocated bones. While the bones were being adjusted, Muchichi bit Zhou Yibai's palm in pain. Zhou Yibai had a cold face and was about to shake off Muchichi, but he saw the woman's beautiful eyes were soaked with tears, crystal clear, which made his heart palpitate. The eyes of the 7th day. "Ms. Mu, please let Yibai go." When Bai Shui saw that Muchichi was biting Zhou Yibai's palm, she was so angry that she reminded Muchichi to let go of Zhou Yibai, but Muchichi ignored Bai Shui. When she was in pain, she wanted Zhou Yibai to be with her. "Fine." Bai Shui's face turned cold when she saw her like this. She was about to throw off Muchichi's skirt when Zhou Yibai spoke up to stop her. "Yibai, you? Could it be that he has fallen for Muchichi?" Thinking of Muchichi's identity, Bai Shui became panicked. "I'm fine." Zhou Yibai didn't notice the gleam in Bai Shui's eyes. He thought Bai Shui was worried about her injury and said calmly. Mu Chichi's eyes gradually turned cold, and her stomach felt nauseous. Maybe it was because he saw Zhou Yibai and Bai Shui showing their affection in front of him. What a pair of dogs. Vomit. The more Mu Chichi thought about it, the more disgusted she felt. When she let go of Zhou Yibai's wrist, she suddenly vomited, and all the acid and fluid sprayed onto Zhou Yibai. Bai Shui was disgusted by the sour smell. With red eyes, she looked at Mu Chichi with a cold expression on her face. Ms. Mu, did you do this on purpose? She could feel that Mu Chichi seemed to hate both her and Zhou Yibai. Why? I want some water. Mu Chichi simply treated Bai Shui as a transparent person, with a pale face, and gave orders to Zhou Yibai. Mu Chichi's disregard for her irritated Bai Shui. She had a gloomy face and was about to speak when Zhou Yibai took off his coat and walked to the table nearby. Yibai? When did you become so close to Miss Mu? Didn't Zhou Yibai remember that Mu Chichi bullied her at the banquet? I want lukewarm water. I don't want hot water. Mu Chichi raised her chin, her beautiful black eyes filled with sneer. Snow White is so jealous, needless to say, she will start to act up. Zhou Yibai held the cup in his hand, his black phoenix eyes filled with a layer of gloom. In the end, the man didn't get angry. He poured the cold water in and made a cup of warm water for Mu Chichi. Bai Shui's pretty face was slightly hideous and distorted. Mrs. Zhu is the eldest young master's wife, right? Why do I think you are the third young master's wife? I feel uncomfortable with the way you look at your love rival. Mu Chichi slammed the cup in her hand onto the table with a sullen face and warned Bai Shui in a lukewarm tone. Bai Shui's face suddenly tensed up, her eyes reddened and she bit her lip to explain, Ms. Mu, please stop talking nonsense. Zhou Yibai also looked at Mu Chichi with a warning look, obviously warning her not to go too far. Mu Chichi responded with a half smile, they are a perfect match. Ms. Mu, stop challenging my bottom line. Zhou Yibai suppressed the urge to strangle Mu Chichi to death and warned her with a cold look. Mu Chichi stroked the cup in front of her and asked indifferently, third young master, you'd better be polite to me. Zhou Yibai's face gradually darkened, and the coldness from his body was particularly penetrating. The housekeeper then brought the blood Ganoderma lucidum according to Zhou Yibai's instructions. Third master, the blood Ganoderma is for Miss Mu. The butler looked at Zhou Yibai and asked respectfully. Zhou Yibai's black phoenix eyes flashed with a hint of coldness, and he said in a cold tone, well, leave it to Miss Mu. Don't play tricks. After the poison is extracted, the doctor will make medicine for the old lady to drink. The housekeeper handed the Ganoderma to Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi took a look at the Ganoderma and said, prepare some filtering materials for me. The butler looked at Zhou Yibai nodded, and the butler went to prepare for Mu Chichi. About 10 minutes later, Mu Chichi began to filter the toxins out of the Ganoderma lucidum with skillful movements. Bai Shui on the side stared at Mu Chichi's movements, her eyes falling on the blood Ganoderma lucidum. About half an hour later, Mu Chichi handed the Ganoderma lucidum to Zhou Yibai and said tiredly, boil the medicine according to the prescription. Blood Ganoderma lucidum is a tonic medicine. Don't take too much at once. Chapter 11 You play dirty tricks on me, let me see how I deal with you. The housekeeper followed Mu Chichi's instructions and took the blood Ganoderma to the kitchen. It takes 1.5 hours to boil the medicine. Because of the blood Ganoderma, the medicinal effect must be boiled for 1.5 hours to be effective. Zhou Yibai, take me home. Mu Chichi raised her chin and ordered Zhou Yibai in a commanding tone. Ahuo, send Miss Mu home. Zhou Yibai's eyes darkened. He ignored Mu Chichi and called Arhua to send Mu Chichi home. Third young master seems to want to burn the bridge after crossing it. Why do I need to show the contract to everyone in the Zhou family? Mu Chichi raised her chin sneerily, stared at Zhou Yibai's handsome face and asked with a half smile. Zhou Yibai's face darkened, and he said coldly, okay, I'll take you back personally. Yibai, Grandma will definitely want to see you when she wakes up, why don't I take Miss Mu there? Bai Shui didn't want Zhou Yibai to send Mu Chichi home, so she wanted to send Mu Chichi home instead of Zhou Yibai. However, Mu Chichi was indifferent to Bai Shui's enthusiasm and said, Mrs. Zhu, with your status, you are also sending me home. Mu Chichi's almost humiliating tone made Bai Shui burst into tears. Mu Chichi, don't go too far. When Zhou Yibai saw Bai Shui crying, he tightened his handsome face and warned Mu Chichi with a cold expression. Mu Chichi did not take Zhou Yibai's warning seriously. She casually swept the cup in front of her directly in front of Bai Shui, who was so scared that her face turned pale. Mu Chichi, this little bitch, is so arrogant. Sorry, my hand slipped. Seeing Bai Shui staring at her fiercely, Mu Chichi curved her lips and smiled sweetly. Bai Shui held her breath and wanted to slap Mu Chichi, but in front of Zhou Yibai, Bai Shui didn't dare to do it. Let's go, Mr. Zhou. You don't want me to tear down the Zhou family, do you? The Zhou family's geographical location is really bad. I can't help but want to vomit when I smell the stench in the air. After saying that, he walked straight forward on his high heels. Zhou Yibai had a gloomy face as he looked at Mu Chichi's back, his dark and cold brows furrowed as he followed behind Mu Chichi. Seeing Zhou Yibai indulging Mu Chichi like this, Bai Shui stomped her feet in anger. What's wrong with Zhou Yibai? Why does he listen to Mu Chichi so much? Bai Shui hated Mu Chichi's humiliation of her. She turned her head to look at the kitchen with a vicious coldness on her lips. Mu Chichi, I will let you know that if you offend me, you will end up in a miserable state. Half an hour later, Zhou Yibai sent Mu Chichi back to Zhu's house. He didn't care about Mu Chichi at all and slammed the door and left. Mu Chichi looked at Zhou Yibai's leaving back, with a hint of sarcasm in her eyes. Zhou Yibai, your good days are still long. Mu Chichi would definitely not let Zhou Yibai live so comfortably during the 1-month slave contract life. Hey, sister, when did you hook up with the third master? Didn't you tell grandpa that you wouldn't marry the third master? Why are you sticking to him now? When Mu Chichi turned around and was about to enter the villa, Mu Weiwei's voice sounded behind her. Mu Chichi turned around and saw Mu Weiwei standing behind her with a sarcastic look on her face. She raised her chin and slowly flicked the dust off her body. Seeing Mu Chichi's arrogant look, Mu Weiwei was unhappy. Mu Chichi, what's with your expression? I am also the second daughter of the Mu family. This time the company was attacked by hackers, and Grandpa was very angry. If it weren't for the help of the third young master, do you think you can survive the danger? So you hired the hacker to frame me? Mu Chichi walked towards Mu Weiwei step by step and asked in a cold tone. Mu Weiwei looked at Mu Chichi approaching her, her face turned pale and she shouted, You, don't try to slander me, I didn't do such a thing. Seeing Mu Weiwei trembling all over, even her face changed color, Mu Chichi couldn't help but ask, Since it wasn't you who did it, why are you so scared? I'm not afraid. Let me tell you, you are not the only heir to the Mu family. You don't have the ability, so I will be the heir. Mu Chichi, take care of yourself. Mu Weiwei didn't dare to look at Mu Chichi, and fled after saying these harsh words. Mu Chichi looked at Mu Weiwei's leaving back with a cold expression, with a hint of disdain at the corner of her mouth. Mu Weiwei, you are playing dirty tricks on me, just wait and see how I will deal with you. Back at the villa, Mu Qian brought a plate of strawberries to Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi likes to eat strawberries the most when she is in a bad mood. Mu Qian even goes to the Mu family's farm to pick some for Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi was as happy as a child, and all the tiredness she had just felt disappeared in an instant. When Mu Qian saw Mu Chichi being as happy as a child, he couldn't help but laugh. He raised his hand, touched Mu Chichi's head, and said gently, Eat more. If it's not enough, I'll make more for you. It's nice to have a brother. Mu Chichi opened her beautiful eyes and said to Mu Qian with a smile. Just as Mu Qian was about to speak, he heard the bodyguards groaning from the gate, and the sound of the door being kicked open. The strawberry in Mu Chichi's hand accidentally fell to the ground. What happened? Someone broke in again. Are they all learning from Zhou Yibai? I'm going out. Mu Chichi. Mu Qian also frowned. When he stood up and was about to check out the situation, Zhou Yibai's cold voice sounded at the door. Mu Chichi looked up towards the door. When she saw Zhou Yibai standing at the door, her heart sank. Something happened to old Mrs. Zhu. Third young master, what do you mean by breaking into the Mu family twice in a row? Are you playing dirty with me? When Mu Qian saw that Zhou Yibai had a strange expression, he immediately stood in front of Mu Chichi, fearing that Zhou Yibai would hurt Mu Chichi. Zhou Yibai had a gloomy face. He waved Mu Qian away and walked straight to Mu Chichi. He grabbed Mu Chichi's neck and pressed her against the wall behind him. Mu Chichi's breathing suddenly became a little difficult, but Mu Chichi immediately resisted. She raised her foot and kicked Zhou Yibai's leg hard. Zhou Yibai gasped in pain and his face suddenly turned cold. Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi touched her neck, her dark almond eyes full of frost. Third young master, this is the second time you have broken into our Mu family, and you dare to pinch my neck. I think you are looking for death, right? Grandma was poisoned after eating the blood Ganoderma, and you didn't filter out the poison from the blood Ganoderma. Chapter 12. Do you believe in Mu Chichi? It turns out to be related to Old Lady Zhou. If she guessed correctly, it was Snow White who did it. She had humiliated Bai Shui so many times. With Bai Shui's cruel and ruthless character, how could she let Mu Chichi go like this? Mu Chichi stared at Zhou Yibai with a cold face. Since I promised you that I would filter out the poison, I will definitely do it. As for why Old Lady Zhou was poisoned, didn't third young master investigate it thoroughly? Who else would do such a thing except you who tampered with the Lingji? He should have thought of this woman's vengeful character long ago. He broke into the Mu family and forced her to hand over the blood Ganoderma lucidum. Although the contract was signed, Mu Chichi must have still been holding a grudge. Did third young master conclude that I did this based on his guess about me? The corner of Mu Chichi's mouth curled up coldly, and her gaze as cold as a knife shot directly at Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai felt a chill on his back due to Mu Chichi's cold gaze. He suddenly felt a little contemptuous of himself for feeling oppressed by Mu Chichi's gaze. It's not you, tell me who it is. Zhou Yibai admitted that he was prejudiced against Mu Chichi, so when he saw that Old Lady Zhou was in trouble, the first person he thought of was Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi sneered, "Third master, why don't we make a deal with you? Trading? What does that mean? What tricks are you trying to play?" Zhou Yibai narrowed his eyes, looked at Mu Chichi and asked. Mu Chichi raised her chin and brushed the jade bracelet on her wrist. "I will help you find the murderer who poisoned Old Lady Zhou, and you must kneel down and apologize for wrongly accusing me. You must stop me from punishing the murderer. Who do you want to frame?" Zhou Yibai didn't believe that the so-called murderer existed. In his opinion, Mu Chichi did all this just to find a scapegoat. Zhou Yibai's slander made Mu Chichi's eyes gradually turn cold. Zhou Yibai's trust in her was really zero. But it doesn't matter. Whatever you think, since I dare to say this, I must have a reason and evidence to make her speechless. Judging from Mu Chichi's tone, it seemed that the murderer was not her. "I want to see what tricks you want to play." Zhou Yibai asked Mu Chichi to go back to Zhu's house with him. Mu Qian was worried about Mu Chichi's safety. He grabbed Mu Chichi's arm and frowned. "Chichi. Don't worry, I'll be fine." Seeing Mu Qian looking at her with a worried look on his face, Mu Chichi hurriedly patted Mu Qian's arm to comfort him. Mu Qian said with a complicated look in his eyes, "Be careful. If anything happens, remember to call me." Good. She is now the eldest daughter of the Mu family. If Zhou Yibai wants to touch her, he has to think twice. She believed that Zhou Yibai would not be so stupid as to do something to her. Bai Shui watched the doctor coming in and out, and old Mrs. Zhou lying on the bed with a pale face, with a gloomy look in her eyes. Zhou Yibai will definitely make Mu Chichi look good, right? So what if she is the eldest daughter of the Mu family? Zhou Yibai doesn't care whether she is the eldest daughter of the Mu family or not. Just as Bai Shui was lost in thought, the sound of a car engine was heard from the yard. Bai Shui came back to her senses instantly. She looked towards the door and immediately walked downstairs. "Yibai, have you sent Mu Chichi to prison?" She relied on her status as the eldest daughter of the Mu family to poison Grandma. "You must not let her go. Mrs. Zhu's eldest young lady seems to want to send me to prison." Mu Chichi's cold voice sounded in Bai Shui's ears. Bai Shui didn't seem to expect that Mu Chichi would follow Zhou Yibai back instead of being thrown into prison by Zhou Yibai. She looked at Mu Chichi with a pale face. How could you? Do you think the third young master will throw me into jail?" She is still as cruel and ruthless as ever. When she gets cruel, she can even do something like poisoning. She is really worthy of being Bai Shui. You poisoned Grandma, shouldn't you go to jail?" Bai Shui felt a little flustered when Mu Chichi looked at her like this. She raised her chin and spoke sternly to Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi raised her chin, stared at Bai Shui, and said with a half smile, "Who poisoned it? Are you curious, madam? What? Are you still trying to frame someone else? I really didn't expect that Miss Mu would dare to do something but not take responsibility for it. Do you know that I made a deal with the third master?" Mu Chichi shifted her gaze from Bai Shui to Zhou Yibai. Although Zhou Yibai didn't understand why Mu Chichi targeted Bai Shui, he didn't say anything. Bai Shui couldn't help but feel a chill on her back. She didn't understand what Mu Chichi meant. Did she make a deal with Zhou Yibai? Bai Shui clenched her fists and looked at Zhou Yibai. Yibai, do you believe in Mu Chichi? Is Zhou Yibai attracted to Mu Chichi? Damn it, she chased away Chuki and then Mu Chichi came. They all wanted to snatch Zhou Yibai away. She will never let anyone ruin her happiness. Ms. Mu, start your performance. Zhou Yibai did not answer Bai Shui, but looked at Mu Chichi and gave orders in a cold tone. Mu Chichi raised her chin and looked sharply at the butler behind Bai Shui. Butler, just tell me, did you make the blood ganoderma? Or did someone else make it? Although the housekeeper didn't understand why Mu Chichi asked this, he still told Mu Chichi the process of boiling ganoderma lucidum. Did anyone enter during this time? The housekeeper said that he made the medicine according to the prescription written by Mu Chichi, and there was absolutely no mistake. I don't know about this. After all, it takes more than an hour to boil the medicine, and the housekeeper was not there. Mu Chichi curled her lips, with a look of sarcasm on her pretty face. Third master, don't tell me you haven't figured out the clues yet. Zhou Yibai indeed lost his mind when he saw old lady Zhu vomiting blood. Now after hearing what Mu Chichi said, Zhou Yibai naturally discovered the clue. Someone poisoned old lady Zhu's medicine while the housekeeper left the kitchen, causing her accident. I want to see your evidence. You swore to it before. Zhou Yibai raised his chin and said with a cold expression. Mu Chichi said calmly, there is a surveillance camera in the Zhu family's kitchen. The third young master probably doesn't know about it, right? Don't say that the third young master doesn't know. Even the first young master's madam, who hardly ever goes into the kitchen, definitely doesn't know either. Mu Chichi accidentally discovered that there was a small surveillance camera in the kitchen. She was sure that Zhou Yibai didn't know about the surveillance camera, and even Bai Shui didn't know about it. Because this surveillance camera seemed to have been secretly installed by someone, but Mu Chichi had no idea what its purpose was. Bai Shui's face suddenly changed and her body couldn't help but tremble. Is there surveillance in the kitchen? Why didn't she know about this? Zhou Yibai narrowed his eyes and glanced at the butler beside him. The poor butler, after being looked at by Zhou Yibai, hurriedly explained, I really don't know about this matter. The housekeeper also doesn't know about the surveillance. Mu Chichi, what are you playing? How can you be so sure that there is a surveillance camera in the kitchen? She looked as if she knew the Zhu family's kitchen very well. Mu Chichi sneered, of course, I am very sure. Chapter 13 But how could she be the seventh day? After all, when she was Zhou Yibai's wife, Mu Chichi was very familiar with every item in the kitchen. Zhou Yibai looked at the flickering light in Mu Chichi's eyes, and he saw Chu Chi's eyes in her eyes again. Yibai, don't listen to her nonsense. The housekeeper has been working in the Zhu family for so many years and didn't know about surveillance. How can she be so sure that there is surveillance in the kitchen? Even if there is, she arranged for someone to install it in advance to frame someone else. She is the eldest daughter of the Mu family. If she wants to escape punishment, she will do anything. When Bai Shui saw Zhou Yibai staring at Mu Chichi absent-mindedly, her face changed slightly. She grabbed Zhou Yibai's arm and explained to the man anxiously. Mu Chichi looked at Bai Shui, who was anxious and terrified, and said with a vicious look on her pretty face, the eldest young lady seems to be anxious. You are talking nonsense. Don't think that we will be afraid of you just because you are the eldest daughter of the Mu family. You attacked Grandma because I offended you. You are such a crazy woman. Bai Shui pointed at Mu Chichi's nose and scolded her harshly. Mu Chichi looked at Bai Shui's finger pointing at her coldly. She reached out her hand to Bai Shui, grabbed her finger, and said coldly, don't point your finger at me. If I'm in a bad mood, I'll break your finger, and you'll be the one who'll be hurt. Yibai. Bai Shui's face was stiff, tears streaming down her face, and she looked at Zhou Yibai with an aggrieved and pitiful expression. Mu Chichi, let go. Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi sharply and warned her. Mu Chichi asked with a cold expression, third young master, do you think I am your servant? How dare you give me orders? The first person to be rude is the eldest young lady. If I hadn't broken her fingers now, she would have laughed secretly. Zhou Yibai said with a gloomy and scary expression, don't go too far. Since someone has framed me, how can I justify someone's frame up if I don't do something a little more? Mu Chichi was talking to Zhou Yibai, but her eyes were looking at Bai Shui. Bai Shui felt cold all over when Mu Chichi looked at her. She always had a sense of deja vu about the person in front of her. By the way, it's the seventh day. Chuki's eyes are the same as hers. But how could she be the seventh day? How could that ugly girl on Chuki be the glamorous rich girl Mu Chichi? I have had someone transfer the surveillance video to your phone, third young master. You can click on it now to see who entered the kitchen and tampered with old lady Zhu's medicine. Mu Chichi let go of Bai Shui's hand and reminded Zhou Yibai in a cold tone. Zhou Yibai took out his mobile phone, and sure enough, a video was sent to him. Bai Shui stared at Zhou Yibai's cell phone. Mu Chichi must be just bluffing, there is no surveillance at all. But when Zhou Yibai handed the video to Bai Shui clearly saw the scene in the video of herself entering the kitchen and pouring something into the old lady's medicine. Bai Shui's strength seemed to be drained away at once, and she sat on the ground. She was trembling all over and pointed at Mu Chichi in panic. Yibai, she is framing me. Framed. Mu Chichi smiled with her lips curved, but her eyes were flashing with coldness. Bai Shui, you said I was framing you. You are the one who framed me. I didn't do such a thing at all. How dare you say you are not framing me? Bai Shui shouted with anger and fierce expression on her face. Mu Chichi crossed her arms and asked calmly, Oh? I framed you? Then what good will it do me? Who do you think you are? Is it worth me to go to so much trouble to frame you? Mu Chichi's question left Bai Shui speechless. You have always been targeting me. Last time at the banquet, you also used despicable means to harm me. Yibai, she has ulterior motives. She just doesn't like me and wants to harm me. How could I possibly poison Grandma? She framed me to get away with this. Bai Shui looked at Zhou Yibai with red eyes and a grieved look on her face. Zhou Yibai said with a straight face and a cold expression, Ahuo, send Miss Mu back to the Mu family first. Third young master, do you not believe the evidence? Or do you want to protect the first young madam? The Zhu family's affairs do not need outsiders interfering. Zhou Yibai's face looked particularly ugly because of Mu Chichi's aggressive look. Mu Chichi will not let Zhou Yibai protect Bai Shui. Bai Shui is now plotting against her. She had harmed her before, and she was waiting for an opportunity to ruin her reputation. But this time, she came forward and wanted her to take action, and Mu Chichi would not let her go easily. I am the one who is being framed now. I have said that I have the final say on how I want to punish the murderer. Don't you remember what I said before? What do you want? Zhou Yibai pinched his nose and looked at Mu Chichi and asked. The video has fully shown that Mu Chichi was wronged, and Bai Shui could not escape. I told you that I will make the person who framed me die miserably. Madam, what do you want me to do to you? Mu Chichi looked at Bai Shui and asked with a smile. You framed me. I didn't poison you. Bai Shui was still being stubborn at this time. Mu Chichi looked at Bai Shui with a cold and disdainful expression. Madam, you really disappoint me. How can you be so cowardly? If you did it, you shouldn't deny it. I said, I didn't do it. Oh? It seems you don't want to settle it privately. Why not just ask the police to come over? Mu Chichi didn't bother to waste time talking to her and picked up her phone to call the police. Bai Shui, kowtow and apologized to Miss Mu. Once the matter is reported to the police, Bai Shui's reputation will be completely ruined. Zhou Yibai looked at Bai Shui with a gloomy face and gave her orders. Bai Shui opened her eyes wide and looked at Zhou Yibai in disbelief. Yibai, how can you let me kneel down to her? She is harming me. You know whether I have harmed you or not. Or let's go to the police station to solve it. I think the eldest young lady seems to want to go to the police station to solve it. Do you want to go to the police station? Zhou Yibai looked at Bai Shui with a gloomy and terrifying expression and asked. Bai Shui's face turned pale instantly. She definitely didn't want to go to the police station. But if she kneels down, she will admit that she poisoned the person. Or do you want Grandma to know about this? Zhou Yibai looked at Bai Shui expressionlessly and continued to ask. Bai Shui pinched her palms and knelt in front of Mu Chichi unwillingly. I did it. I just want to harm you. I don't want you to seduce Yibai, so I came up with this idea. Until I say stop. Ms. Mu, don't go too far. Zhou Yibai reminded in a cold tone. Third young master, she harmed me, but the one who suffered was your own grandmother. Are you sure you want to indulge Bai Shui? Chapter 14 Why do you speak up for Mu Chichi? Although the poison Bai Shui used was not harmful to old lady Zhu, nor would it kill her, it would cause great pain to her frail body. Zhou Yibai can still indulge Bai Shui. If this isn't true love, then what is? The woman's ridicule and sarcasm made Zhou Yibai's face instantly cold. He glanced at Mu Chichi, and no emotion could be seen on his handsome face. In the end, he said nothing. Yibai. Bai Shui looked at Zhou Yibai with a wronged and pitiful look, hoping that he would speak for her. But the man just said coldly, "You know very well what happened." Bai Shui's face turned pale. How could Zhou Yibai, such a smart man, not see through it? Keep kneeling. Mu Chichi raised her eyebrows and glanced at Zhou Yibai, then continued to give orders to Bai Shui. Bai Shui lowered her head and could only continue to kneel down to Mu Chichi unwillingly. Mu Chichi looked at Bai Shui's unwilling expression and thought about her frame-up. She suddenly asked, "I wonder if the eldest young lady dreamed of her dead child after her miscarriage?" Bai Shui's hands trembled violently twice, and her face turned pale as she looked at Mu Chichi. Why did she feel that there was something else behind the words of the woman in front of her? Does she know that she was the one who framed Chuki? Does the third young master still think of his ex-wife? Miss Mu is very familiar with the affairs of our Zhou family. Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi expressionlessly and said with cold eyes, "Does she know Chuki?" Thinking in this way, her previous vague hatred had a traceable basis. As for me, I just think that this retribution thing is really indescribable, madam, don't you think so? Bai Shui's face was frozen and she didn't say anything, but her eyes were flashing with ferocity. "Who are you?" Bai Shui raised her head and questioned Mu Chichi in a voice that only she and Mu Chichi could hear. Why did she see Chuki's eyes in Mu Chichi's eyes? Is she related to Chuki? I'm standing right in front of you, and you don't recognize me, Snow White. Mu Chichi patted Bai Shui's face, her beautiful eyes flashing with cold murderous intent. "Third master, remember to come to the Mu family early to cook for me. If you exceed the time, I will be very angry." After Mu Chichi admired Bai Shui's pale face for a while, she let go of Bai Shui, stood up, looked at Zhou Yibai, and gave him an ambiguous order. Bai Shui clenched her fists with a fierce look on her face. What's wrong with this little bitch Mu Chichi? She actually asked Zhou Yibai to cook for her? Butler, bring the eldest young lady upstairs. Zhou Yibai frowned and asked the butler to take Bai Shui away. Bai Shui was unwilling to give in, so she reached out her hand to Zhou Yibai, trying to grab him, but the man dodged her. Bai Shui burst into tears instantly. The third young master really doesn't know how to be gentle with women. Mu Chichi looked at the scene coldly. After saying this, she walked towards the door with a proud step. The seventh day. Mu Chichi had just taken a step when Zhou Yibai's words made her freeze in her tracks. In just a moment, she quickly left. Zhou Yibai seemed to be suspicious of her. Did he recognize it? But Mu Chichi quickly denied her previous thoughts. She was standing right in front of Zhou Yibai, and he didn't recognize who she was. Chuki is nothing in Zhou Yibai's heart, so how could he recognize her? Third master. Arhu walked up to Zhou Yibai, who had a cold expression on his face, and called out to him. Zhou Yibai came back to his senses and looked at Arhu and asked, "Does Mu Chichi look like Chu Chi?" Arhu didn't react for a moment and had no idea what Zhou Yibai meant by his words. He could only look at Zhou Yibai in confusion. I'm really crazy. Before Arhu could figure out what Zhou Yibai meant, Zhou Yibai pinched his nose and shook his head at Arhu in self-mockery. Why is she the seventh day? She is the eldest daughter of the Mu family, and Chuki is just a beggar. How could she be the same person as Mu Chichi? Third master, the old lady is awake. Just when Zhou Yibai was about to ask Arhu if he had found Chuki's whereabouts, the housekeeper's voice rang out. Upon hearing this, Zhou Yibai immediately went upstairs. In Mrs. Zhu's bedroom, Bai Shui was talking to the old lady. When she saw Zhou Yibai coming in, she bit her lip and called out to Zhou Yibai, "Yibai. Did Miss Mu act unruly in Zhu's house?" Old Mrs. Zhu looked at Zhou Yibai with a cold face and asked. No. Zhou Yibai subconsciously protected Mu Chichi. Old Mrs. Zhu half closed her eyes, stared at Zhou Yibai's handsome face and asked, "Yibai, don't lie to me, what kind of deal did you make with the eldest lady of the Mu family?" "Grandma, you don't need to worry about it. As long as you are fine, that's all." Zhou Yibai didn't want to tell old lady Zhu that he had signed a 1-month male servant contract with Mu Chichi. Mr. Mu contacted me a few days ago and wanted to form an alliance with our Zhou family. The marriage between the two families naturally comes first with interests. Although old lady Zhou liked Bai Shui very much, she also understood that Bai Shui wanted to marry Zhou Yibai. If Mr. Mu had not proposed a business marriage, old lady Zhou would have fulfilled Bai Shui's wish, but for now she could only choose the interests of her family. Grandma, who does the Mu family want to marry? Bai Shui's face changed slightly. She grabbed old lady Zhu's arm and asked urgently. In addition to Mu Chichi, the Mu family also has Mu Weiwei. No matter who she is, as long as she is not married to Zhou Yibai, she has nothing to do with her. What does Yibai think of the eldest lady of the Mu family? Old Mrs. Zhu glanced at Bai Shui with a warning in her eyes. When Bai Shui was looked at by old lady Zhu, her originally excited emotions instantly calmed down. In front of old lady Zhu, she did not dare to be too presumptuous. Grandma wants me to marry into the Mu family. There was no expression of joy or anger on Zhou Yibai's handsome face, and his phoenix eyes were filled with coldness. The marriage between the Mu family and the Zhou family will benefit both of our families. You are my most outstanding grandson, so you should understand what I mean. I refuse. He will not enter into a business marriage with anyone. Grandma, our Zhou family does not need to marry into the Mu family. Bai Shui couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when she heard Zhou Yibai refuse the marriage proposal. Then she looked at old lady Zhu and muttered softly. Old Mrs. Zhu said calmly, think about it carefully. If the Zhu family can get help from the Mu family, the funds will be able to start operating. Okay, I'm going to rest now, you all can go out. Old lady Zhu knew Zhou Yibai's temper, so she would not force Zhou Yibai to marry into the Mu family. She believed that her grandson could understand the current situation and would choose a suitable solution. After Bai Shui helped old Mrs. Zhu lie down, she followed behind Zhou Yibai. Yibai, are you angry with me? Don't mess with Mu Chichi in the future. Zhou Yibai glanced at Bai Shui and said with a cold expression. Bai Shui was not satisfied with Zhou Yibai's cold attitude towards her but his protection for Mu Chichi. She grabbed Zhou Yibai's arm and asked, Yibai, why are you speaking for Mu Chichi? Are you in love with her? Chapter 15. An extremely hypocritical man. Don't talk nonsense. Zhou Yibai had a cold face. After he didn't let go of Bai Shui's hand, his eyes were cold. I won't pursue this matter. You know why. Yibai, don't be so cold to me. You promised him that you would take care of me for the rest of my life. Bai Shui bit her lip lightly, and stretched out her hand to grab Zhou Yibai's arm without giving up, but the man gave her a cold look and Bai Shui didn't dare to move. Zhou Yibai said coldly, I just promised to take care of you and not get involved in other things. You'd better not make me angry. Bai Shui's performance this time and again disappointed Zhou Yibai. He would not indulge Bai Shui and let her fall into an irretrievable situation. Yibai, you can't fall in love with anyone except me. You promised him. Bai Shui clenched her fists and looked at Zhou Yibai's stern back, her eyes filled with deep resentment. No matter what, as long as he has a promise to that person, Zhou Yibai cannot abandon her. In this life, and for all eternity, Zhou Yibai can only protect her and cannot fall in love with anyone else. No matter whether it is Chuki or Mu Chichi, don't even think about snatching Zhou Yibai away. Mu Chichi was in annoyance and threw the documents in her hand onto the table. When she returned to the Mu family from the Zhou family, her mind was filled with Zhou Yibai's words, the 7th day of the first lunar month. She didn't want to hear the words, the 7th day of the first lunar month. Chichi. Mu Qian came in with a plate of fruit. Seeing Mu Chichi sitting in a chair in a daze with a grim look on her face, he walked up to her with concern in his eyes and gently touched Mu Chichi's hair like he did when they were little. Brother, I'm fine. She grabbed Mu Qian's arm and rubbed her head against him. If you don't want to see Zhou Yibai, I'll have him kicked out. That won't work. He was my male servant for the past month. I have suffered so much in the Zhou family. How can I let him go so easily? Mu Chichi crossed her arms and pouted at Mu Qian. I'm afraid you'll fall in love with him again. Mu Qian patted Mu Chichi's head and reminded her helplessly with a look on his face. Mu Chichi's pretty face was cold. No. No matter who she falls in love with, she will never fall in love with Zhou Yibai. Brother, did you invite the Zhou family to Grandpa's birthday party? Nature. The Zhou family is a big family in the imperial capital. Mr. Mu intends to form an alliance with the Zhou family through marriage. Naturally, he invited the Zhou family to his birthday party the day after tomorrow. That day you told Grandpa that I was sick and couldn't attend the banquet. What are you going to do? Don't be willful. Mu Qian grabbed Mu Chichi's arm with worry on his face. Old Mu had never been as good to Mu Chichi as he was to Mu Weiwei. Moreover, she had been missing for 3 years and had disobeyed old Mu in the old house last time. If Mu Chichi did not try to make her presence felt in front of the old man, Mu Weiwei would really become the heir of the Mu family. I want to use Chuki's identity to fight Zhou Yibai. Mu Chichi raised her chin with a cold look on her face. She could not forget the injustice she suffered on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month. But she didn't want to use Mu Chichi to beat those who hurt her, so she wanted to use Chuki's identity. How do you want to do this? Mu Qian asked while stroking Mu Chichi's cheek. Zhou Yibai is looking for me. There was a hint of cunning in Mu Chichi's beautiful eyes. Brother, take me with you. I want to be a spoiled clown girl, okay? Mu Qian immediately understood what Mu Chichi wanted to play. Will the video be played at Grandpa's party? What Mu Qian was talking about was naturally the video in which Bai Shui framed her. Mu Chichi stroked his chin and thought for a while. His black eyes were slightly cold. When Bai Shui sees me, she will definitely not be able to hold back. Let me see how much she wants to die before I decide. Miss, the third master is here and has gone to the kitchen to cook for you. As soon as Mu Chichi finished speaking, the housekeeper's voice sounded at the door. Mu Chichi played with her fingers and responded, "Tell him that I want to eat braised lion's head, dry pot shrimp, garlic intestines, duck blood vermicelli, and banana ice cream. These dishes are difficult to prepare. It is naturally impossible for a novice like Zhou Yibai to do this." Mu Chichi just wanted to make trouble for Zhou Yibai. The third young master said that he doesn't know how to cook what the eldest lady said. If the eldest lady wants to eat, she can cook it herself. He won't serve her. Huh? Such a bad temper. Then ask the third young master if he wants to give me all the shares of the Zhou family. If Zhou Yibai can't stand the 1-month contract of selling himself, he must give all the shares of Zhou Group to Mu Chichi. The butler went to deliver the message again, but this time he didn't come back. It seemed that Zhou Yibai had compromised. Mu Qian looked at Mu Chichi and shook his head. Just as he was about to leave, he received a call from Mu Lao when he reached the door. "Come to the old house to see me, don't tell Chichi." After giving Mu Qian his instructions in a commanding tone, Mr. Mu hung up the phone. Mu Qian looked at the phone that had been hung up, with a slightly gloomy look on his handsome face. He held the phone and turned to look in the direction of Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi happened to look up and saw Mu Qian holding the phone and looking at her with complicated eyes. She asked, "Brother, who's calling? Could it be at the old house?" Mu Qian came back to his senses and shook his head at Mu Chichi. "Client, you should have a good rest. If Zhou Yibai bullies you, call me." "Good." Mu Chichi frowned and looked at Mu Qian's leaving back, with a gloomy look on her face. "I always feel like my elder brother is hiding something from her. I hope she is just overthinking it." About half an hour. Zhou Yibai had a cold face and threw the prepared food in front of Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi raised her chin and looked at the food in front of her. She glanced at Zhou Yibai and asked, "What is this? If you are not satisfied, ask your people to do it again." Zhou Yibai finished speaking indifferently, and suddenly placed his hands on both sides of Mu Chichi, his hot breath pressing directly at Mu Chichi. The man's tough action made Mu Chichi's body suddenly tense. When she raised her foot and was about to kick Zhou Yibai, her chin was held by the man. "You know Chuki. Everything she did to Bai Shui was just to help Chuchi vent her anger, right?" Mu Chichi smiled and waved Zhou Yibai's hand away. "I don't understand what third young master said. You have no reason to target Shirayuki." Zhou Yibai straightened up, glanced at Mu Chichi with sharp and cold eyes and said. Hearing this, Mu Chichi smiled and asked, "When did I target the eldest young lady? She always wanted me to beat her up, and I was just helping her." Zhu Yi's black phoenix eyes suddenly turned cold. "I'm not kidding you, where is Chuki?" Mu Chichi ignored the man's cold expression and yawned as she asked, "Why would third young master want to see her? A divorced woman, is third young master still reluctant to let her go? People who don't know would think you have deep feelings for your ex-wife. A very hypocritical man." Zhu Yi's black phoenix eyes were filled with an icy and chilling chill. He stretched out his hand towards Mu Chichi, as if he wanted to strangle Mu Chichi's neck. Chapter 16. She is the seventh day. Seeing this, Muchich's eyes turned cold. She raised her foot and kicked the man's hand away. Zhou Yibai, this is the Mu family, you can't be so presumptuous. I'm really crazy. The woman's cold words were like a basin of cold water poured over his head. Zhou Yibai took a step back, spoke to Muchichi in a hoarse voice, and walked towards the door. Zhou Yibai, you never loved her, did you? Muchichi looked at the man's back as he left and spoke softly in a hoarse voice. The man's back suddenly tensed, but quickly relaxed, and finally disappeared from Muchichi's sight. Muchichi looked at the figure that she could no longer see and a tear rolled down her cheeks. Muchichi realized that she was crying and wiped her eyelids vigorously. Muchichi, are you crazy to cry for a man like this? After calming down, Muchichi looked at the food Zhou Yibai had made on the table. With a cold face, she threw it directly into the trash can. Zhou Yibai, aren't you looking for me? I will meet you soon. She picked up the phone beside her and called Xiao Wan directly, telling her to meet at the bar tonight. She hadn't gone to the bar to indulge herself for a long time, and tonight she was not only going to the bar, but also to go racing. She wanted to go back to the Muchichi who had not fallen in love with Zhou Yibai, the carefree and heartless Muchichi. The largest bar in the capital. Zhou Yibai was looking nonchalantly at the men and women swaying on the dance floor when a hand snatched the wine glass from his hand. Lin Cheng's laughter rang in Zhou Yibai's ears. It's really strange that Mr. Zhu-san would come to the bar to drink alone. Zhou Yibai half closed his eyes and looked at Lin Cheng, who took his wine glass away. What are you doing? You look like you've been heartbroken. To prevent you from losing control later, I'd advise you not to drink so much. Lin Cheng slowly sat down next to Zhou Yibai and reminded Zhou Yibai with a smile. Lin Cheng, you are looking for death. Wow, the moon goddess is here tonight. Zhou Yibai's face was gloomy and terrifying. Just as he was about to get angry at Lin Cheng, a scream suddenly came from the dance floor downstairs. Zhou Yibai looked towards the dance floor and heard many people shouting the name Moon Goddess. My goddess. Lin Cheng is a frequent visitor to bars. He knows all the bars there. He has great admiration for the Moon Goddess. Zhou Yibai frowned and looked at Lin Cheng's excited expression, raising his chin slightly. Who is the Moon God? What kind of good person can the person that Lin Cheng, a man who does not do any serious work, worships be? Young Master Zhu, you really don't care about worldly matters. The Moon Goddess is the god of dance, a natural-born dancer. Zhou Yibai looked at Lin Cheng with glowing eyes, showing no interest at all. At this time, music sounded from the dance floor, and a woman in a sexy black suspender skirt and heavy makeup appeared on the dance floor, immediately attracting everyone's attention. Even Zhou Yibai, who had a look of disdain just now, almost stopped breathing after seeing the woman appear. The woman was wearing a half mask, and her every move was charming and seductive. When she danced in the crowd, she attracted a lot of people's attention. Everyone looked at her, following her movements and being drawn to her. How about it, isn't it attractive? Seeing that Zhou Yibai's eyes were also on the woman, Lin Cheng asked with an extremely evil smile. Zhou Yibai asked coldly, vulgar woman. After saying that, she pushed Lin Cheng's hand away and walked towards the door of the bar. However, Muchichi, who was dancing, heard what Zhou Yibai said. The woman's face hidden by the mask instantly turned cold. She didn't expect that she would meet Zhou Yibai when she came to the bar to dance. What made her most uncomfortable was what Zhou Yibai had just said. A vulgar woman. The bastard actually dared to call her a vulgar woman, so she would make him know how powerful vulgar women are. The woman jumped directly from the dance floor, twisting her waist and moving towards Zhou Yibai. Everyone stared at Muchichi's actions, even Lin Cheng tilted his head and looked at Muchichi. Xiao Wan, who had been accompanying Muchichi all the time, saw Muchichi walking towards Zhou Yibai. She did not stop her, but instead glanced at Zhou Yibai with a cold and disdainful look. Only Muchichi would be attracted by a man like Zhou Yibai who is all show and no substance. Apart from a good-looking face, Xiao Wan couldn't see any shining points in Zhou Yibai. Roll. Zhou Yibai narrowed his eyes, looked at the women dancing around him, and scolded them in a cold tone. Muchichi was unmoved, twisting her slender waist and pressing her soft body against Zhou Yibai. Sir, you are really fierce to my heart, I like it so much. Muchichi deliberately used a delicate tone to disgust Zhou Yibai. Sure enough, Zhou Yibai was disgusted by Muchich's pretending to be delicate, and his handsome face looked extremely ugly at this moment. The man raised his hand and was about to push away Muchichi, who was clinging to him, but Muchichi grabbed the man's hand and put it around her waist. Zhou Yi's black eyes flashed with an icy chill. He pinched Muchichi's waist, put his face close to her, and warned her with a cold look in his eyes, "You'd better get out of here, otherwise." Otherwise? What to do? Muchichi's hand brushed across Zhou Yibai's waist and abdomen, and she gave him an ambiguous expression. Zhou Yibai's eyes suddenly darkened. He grabbed the woman's wrist and asked in a hoarse voice, "Who are you?" "This feeling. The seventh day? Is this woman the seventh day of the first lunar month?" Seeing Zhou Yibai losing control, Muchichi nimbly avoided him and said with a smile, "I am the moon goddess, the vulgar woman that you are talking about, sir." "Stop." Muchichi and Zhou Yibai played hide and seek. Zhou Yibai's eyes were scarlet. He chased after Muchichi, and the bar suddenly became lively. Lin Cheng saw Zhou Yibai chasing Muchichi, looking extremely out of control. He touched his chin, rolled his eyes and walked forward. "Hey, didn't you just call her a vulgar woman? Now you're chasing after someone else. I can't stand your licking behavior." Zhou Yibai waved away Lin Cheng, but did not see Muchichi. "Find her for me." Zhou Yibai grabbed Lin Cheng's clothes and scolded him. When Lin Cheng saw Zhou Yibai was so out of control, he had a strange look on his face. "Third master, what's wrong with you? Could it be that he was really attracted to the moon goddess? She is on the seventh day. Are you kidding me? Your ex-wife? The ugly one." Lin Cheng seriously suspected that Zhou Yibai was joking with him. He knew Chuki, but how could such an ugly face compare to his goddess Yushin? Although the moon goddess was wearing a mask, her graceful figure could not be compared to that of an ugly woman. Zhou Yibai was too lazy to talk nonsense with Lin Cheng, he had to find the woman just now. He couldn't be wrong, those eyes, that action, only Chuki would do that. Chapter 17. Want to see Chuki? Dream on. He vaguely remembered that when they were in bed, the woman liked to use this action, circling around his waist and abdomen, making him unable to stop. "Hey, Zhou Yibai, I still think you must." Zhou Yibai ignored Lin Cheng. The man's cold eye swept around the bar looking for Muchichi, but he could no longer see her among the people coming and going. Zhou Yibai could only shuttle through the crowd to look for Muchichi. "On the seventh day of the new year, I wonder where you can run to. You actually dare to go to the bar to dance?" At this time, Muchichi, who was drinking on the second floor, looked coldly at Zhou Yibai, who was looking for her in the crowd. The anxiety on the man's face was as if he loved her very much, which made Muchichi find it ridiculous. "Did he recognize you?" Xiao Wan patted Muchichi's shoulder and pointed at Zhou Yibai downstairs and asked. "Who knows? After all, she was once his bedmate. She actually did it on purpose. She just wanted to test whether Zhou Yibai could recognize her. Don't tell me you still have hope for him." Xiao Wan frowned and looked at Muchichi, and asked with a serious expression. Muchichi looked at Xiao Wan with a sharp gaze. "Xiao Wan, I no longer love him." "That's fine." With Muchichi's words, Xiao Wan felt much more at ease. "Then I want to punish him." "You should have no objection, right? What do you want to do?" Muchichi became interested and looked at Xiao Wan and asked. Xiao Wan clapped his hands, and a bodyguard in black brought over the props that Muchichi had used to disguise herself. Xiao Wan put on all the disguises as quickly as possible and stood directly opposite Muchichi. Muchichi stared blankly at the familiar yet strange face in front of her. This is the face of the seventh day. She had been with Zhou Yibai for 3 years with an ugly face. How is it? Is it similar? Muchichi calmed her mind and nodded gently to Xiao Wan. "I will use Chuki's identity to beat up Zhou Yibai, and you are not allowed to do anything." "Good." A hint of cunning flashed in Muchichi's eyes. If Xiao Wan wanted to beat Zhou Yibai, she would not stop him. Xiao Wan is a taekwondo master. Zhou Yibai can only suffer losses here with Xiao Wan. Here, Zhou Yibai, who was being plotted against by Xiao Wan and Muchichi, looked around but couldn't find Muchichi. The man suddenly felt a chill on his back and he sneezed twice in succession. Lin Cheng followed Zhou Yibai and said breathlessly, "I think you are attracted by her beauty." The moon goddess can't be that ugly girl on the 7th day of the lunar calendar. You've divorced her, but you still act like you love her. I don't understand. Are you really in love with this ugly girl Chuki? Lin Cheng's words made Zhou Yibai's face suddenly turn cold. The man's black eyes flashed with cold light as he swept towards Lin Cheng. Lin Cheng was irritated by Zhou Yibai's creepy gaze. He shook his body and explained quickly, "Why did you like that ugly girl Chuki? I heard that you have been very close to the eldest daughter of the Mu family recently. She is a great beauty. Do you have any idea of forming a business marriage with her?" The man's breath became colder, and Lin Cheng almost froze to death. Just as he rolled his eyes in silence with a gloomy face, Chuki's voice sounded behind Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai pushed away Lin Cheng, who was blocking his way, and looked behind him. Chuki stood not far away from him and looked at him. Zhou Yibai walked towards Chuki with a gloomy face. "After hiding for so long, you finally agree. Chuki, stop." The woman ignored Zhou Yibai and ran towards the bar entrance. Seeing this, Zhou Yibai immediately chased after her. Lin Cheng saw that Zhou Yibai was a little out of control. Although he felt very confused, he still followed Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai chased the woman all the way into an alley near the bar. When Zhou Yibai saw several big men in black standing in the alley, he asked coldly, "Chuki, what do you want to play?" After not seeing each other for a few days, this woman actually dared to play this trick on him. "Of course I'll beat you up." Xiao Wan had disliked Zhou Yibai for a long time. Especially when thinking about how Mu Chichi disguised herself as ugly for Zhou Yibai, gave up the family inheritance rights to be with him but was hurt by him like this. Xiao Wan just wanted to flatten Zhou Yibai's handsome face that he was proud of. Zhou Yibai looked at Xiao Wan and asked coldly, "Who are you?" "You are not Chuki." Just now he was confused by the other party's dress and thought he saw Chuki. Now that he has calmed down, Zhou Yibai quickly recognized that the woman in front of him was not Chuki at all. Xiao Wan was a little surprised. She thought her disguise was perfect. Didn't Zhou Yibai also think he was Mu Chichi at first? "I'm Chuki." "What? It's only been a short time since we got divorced, and young Master Sansan doesn't even remember me." "You're not Chuki, why are you pretending to be her?" After Zhou Yibai said this, he directly attacked Xiao Wan. Xiao Wan was not in a hurry and asked his men to play with Zhou Yibai. In order to beat Zhou Yibai, she selected a lot of people with good skills to deal with Zhou Yibai. Mu Chichi stood in a dark corner, looking coldly at Zhou Yibai, who was surrounded by people. She took out a few melon seeds from her pocket and ate them while watching. After 2 or 3 rounds, Zhou Yibai knocked everyone to the ground, and Mu Chichi was stunned with her hand holding the melon seeds. She didn't know Zhou Yibai was so skilled. "Where is Chuki?" At this time, Zhou Yibai attacked Xiao Wan directly. He grabbed Xiao Wan's neck and pressed her against the wall behind him. The man's fierce look made Xiao Wan sneer, "What do you want to do with her? You scumbag." The woman's rude insults made Zhou Yi's black eyes suddenly turn cold. Without hesitation, he raised his foot and attacked Xiao Wan. Xiao Wan was not willing to be outdone, so the two of them started fighting in the alley. Unfortunately, Xiao Wan was no match for Zhou Yibai and was pinned to the ground by Zhou Yibai in an instant. Xiao Wan gasped in pain and his face turned red. "Dogman! Where is Chuki?" Zhou Yibai was sure that Xiao Wan must know Chuki, otherwise she wouldn't pretend to be Chuki to make fun of her. "Want to see Chuki? Dream on." Xiao Wan looked at Zhou Yibai with disdain and refused to tell Zhou Yibai the whereabouts of Chuki. Seeing that she was unwilling to tell him the whereabouts of Chuki, Zhou Yibai's eyes gradually turned cold, and the hand holding Xiao Wan's arm also exerted pressure. Mu Chichi was worried that Zhou Yibai would hurt Xiao Wan, so she had to scold Zhou Yibai. "Let Xiao Wan go." "Mu Chichi, you are here too." Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi, who walked out of the darkness. He let go of Xiao Wan, and no emotion could be seen on his handsome face. Sandang is really out of his mind, bullying a woman. "Chichi, call the police right now. I want to sue him for molesting me." Chapter 18. What is your relationship with Chuki? Xiao Wan showed an aggrieved expression and choked up as he spoke to Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi looked at the expression on Xiao Wan's face, and her eyes fell on Zhou Yibai. Seeing Zhu Yi's gloomy face, Mu Chichi suddenly felt in a very good mood. Okay, I'll call the police right now. Is that so? Then Miss Mu, you have to be careful about what you are going to tell the police when you get to the police station. Zhu Yibai calmly took out his cell phone from his pocket and shook it at Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi looked at the phone in Zhu Yibai's hand and asked with deep eyes, "What do you mean?" Zhu Yibai has another trick up his sleeve. She tried to hurt me. If I hand the evidence over to the police, I wonder how long I will be sentenced to. Zhu Yibai reminded in a cold tone. Xiao Wan didn't expect that she didn't get Zhu Yibai, but was threatened by him. She blushed and pointed at Zhu Yibai and cursed, "Zhu Yibai, you dog man, you are so treacherous and cunning. I always find the seventh day." Zhu Yibai ignored Xiao Wan's insults, said this, and walked away. Mu Chichi looked at Zhu Yibai's back, with a layer of darkness on her pretty face. "Hey, you're not attracted to him again, are you?" "No, I'm just curious about what he wants me to do." "What else can I do? Men are just cheapskates." Xiao Wan muttered softly. Mu Chichi looked at the wounds on Xiao Wan's neck and arms. Zhu Yibai didn't use much force. "Does it hurt?" Xiao Wan looked at the wound on her body, pouting and showing a pitiful expression. "It hurts so much, I underestimated that bastard. Next time I will definitely teach him a lesson. Don't get involved in my affairs with Zhu Yibai. I will settle the matter with him myself. I'm not afraid that you will be bewitched by him. I'll take you home first. You must help me beat him up." "Good." Xiao Wan grabbed Mu Chichi's arm and did not forget to tell Mu Chichi to help him get revenge. After sending Xiao Wan back, Mu Chichi bumped into the injured Zhu Yibai on their way back. The man was leaning against the car on the side of the road, his body covered in blood. Mu Chichi stared at Zhu Yibai's pale face with a cold expression, and slowly clenched her fists. How did he get hurt? Mingming didn't seem to be injured when he was being beaten by Xiao Wan. Ahem. Just as Mu Chichi fell into deep thought, Zhu Yibai, who was leaning against the car, coughed. Bright red blood flowed from the corner of the man's mouth. Mu Chichi's breath was choked when she saw this. Mu Chichi told herself not to care about Zhu Yibai. She drove past Zhu Yibai, but after hearing the man coughing, she finally softened her heart and stopped the car. Mu Chichi got out of the car with a sour face and walked straight towards Zhu Yibai. When she walked in front of Zhu Yibai, looking at Zhu Yibai with his eyes closed, Mu Chichi kicked Zhu Yibai's body with her toes. "Hey, is he dead?" Zhu Yibai did not respond to Mu Chichi. Seeing this, Mu Chichi kicked Zhu Yibai again. Only then did Zhu Yibai open his eyes and look at Mu Chichi. When Mu Chichi saw him open his eyes, she asked coldly, "What's wrong with you?" The seventh day. Zhu Yibai lost too much blood and his vision was blurred. He thought the person standing in front of him was his ugly wife Chuki. When Mu Chichi heard Zhu Yibai call out the name Chuki, the woman's body suddenly tensed up. She straightened her back, and her black eyes were cold. She looked at Zhu Yibai and asked, "Why are you calling her for something? For Bai Shui, aren't you going to abandon her? He trusted everyone except his wife. Why are you calling her name now?" Zhu Yibai coughed twice, and blood flowed out again, with a faint smell of blood floating in the air. Smelling the bloody smell, Mu Chichi felt a little nauseous in her stomach. She asked coldly, "Zhu Yibai, have you ever loved Chuki?" "Snow White." Zhu Yibai frowned and called Bai Shui's name, and Mu Chichi's heart instantly turned cold. She rubbed her nose in self-mockery. "Mu Chichi, you are really crazy." She actually expected to hear Zhu Yibai say that he loved her? She really hasn't been hurt yet. "Zhu Yibai, I will make you pay back what you owe me." Mu Chichi squatted down, grabbed Zhu Yibai's arm, and dragged Zhu Yibai into her car. She would never let Zhu Yibai die like this. It would be too easy for him to die. After Mu Chichi took Zhu Yibai into the car, she took Zhu Yibai back to the villa. Zhu Yibai was dragged out of the car. He was injured and kept gasping in pain, but Mu Chichi seemed not to hear him and threw Zhu Yibai to the ground. The housekeeper came over and saw Zhu Yibai, who was unconscious and covered in blood. He looked at Mu Chichi and asked, "Miss, what's wrong with the third young master? Please ask a doctor to come and see him." Mu Chichi sat on the sofa beside her and spoke in a calm tone. "Okay." Zhu Yibai lying on the ground looked particularly pitiful, and the housekeeper couldn't help but feel a little sympathy for him. 15 minutes later, the doctor was called in. Muchichi pointed at Zhou Yibai lying on the ground and asked the doctor to treat his wound. Seeing that Zhou Yibai was seriously injured, the doctor asked the servant to help Zhou Yibai to Muchichi's room. The treatment took about 25 minutes. Zhou Yibai was slashed on his waist, abdomen, and arms. The wounds were very deep and he needed to rest well. You are really annoying. Why didn't they hack you to death after you were hacked like this? After listening to the doctor's report, Muchichi looked at Zhou Yibai lying on the bed and muttered softly. The doctor said with a cold sweat, if the young lady hadn't brought him back, his life would have been in danger a moment later. Upon hearing this, Muchichi just looked at Zhou Yibai on the bed with a cold gaze and asked calmly, is he okay now? Yes, it's no big deal now. Oh, go on down. After the doctor left, Zhou Yibai woke up. He looked at Muchichi and asked in a hoarse voice, thank you. It's so rare to see the third young master in such a state of distress. We were being chased. When Zhou Yibai said this, his eyes were cold. Muchichi sneered, the third young master is so annoying, it seems that many people want to kill him. Zhou Yibai could tell that Muchichi disliked him. He raised his chin, stared into Muchichi's beautiful eyes and asked, what is your relationship with Chuki? Muchichi's body suddenly tensed up, and she said coldly, it doesn't matter. Zhou Yibai lowered his eyes and said nothing. Seeing Zhou Yibai didn't say anything, Muchichi was angry and said, since third young master is fine, go back to the Zhou family. I won't look for you for the time being. Zhou Yibai ignored Muchichi and said in a cold tone, my wound hurts, so I'll stay with you for the time being. Old Mrs. Zhou hasn't recovered yet, and he doesn't want the old lady to know about his injury and worry about him. Did I tell you to live with me? Seeing Zhou Yibai's arrogant look, Muchichi asked with dissatisfaction in her eyes. Chapter 19. What is your relationship with Muqian? How much? Zhou Yibai handed the bank card in his pocket to Muchichi and asked in a hoarse voice. It's not impossible for the third young master to live here. Give me 100 million a day. Zhou Yibai. Is this woman obsessed with money? Good. Seeing Zhou Yibai's dark face, Muchichi guessed that Zhou Yibai might be angry soon, but she didn't expect Zhou Yibai to say yes directly. Muchichi held the bank card in her hand and snorted, no credit. After saying that, he walked towards the door. Zhou Yibai looked at Muchichi's back, leaned against the pillow behind him in silence for a moment, then took out his cell phone from his pocket and called Arhua. Ahuo, help me check if Zhu Yang is back. Zhu Yang, the second son of the Zhu family, and the two have always been at odds. After the eldest son passed away, the second son put a lot of obstacles in Zhou Yibai's way, both openly and covertly. This killing must be related to the second young master. No, but I found out that the second young master's confidant is in the imperial capital. Zhou Yibai sneered, he really can't wait to kill me. Are you injured? I almost died in his hands. Zhou Yibai knew very well that the person who took action was Zhu Yang. The old lady wanted to hand over the Zhu family to Zhou Yibai for management, but he naturally didn't want to do so. He wanted to get rid of Zhou Yibai and become the person in charge of the Zhu family. So where are you now? Arhua asked anxiously. Muchichi's house. Zhou Yibai pinched the tip of his nose, his black eyes were cold. Check if Muchichi is related to Chuki, and also, is the moon goddess Chuki. He hung up the phone after he said that. Zhou Yibai's intuition told him that Chuki and Muchichi had some kind of relationship, but he was not sure what the relationship was. Mr. Mu's birthday banquet was held at the Mu family's old house. Zhou Yibai received a call from old lady Zhu, who asked him to attend Mr. Mu's birthday party and not to lose the Zhu family's etiquette. Zhou Yibai knew what old lady Zhu meant. She also wanted Zhou Yibai to marry into the Mu family. Zhou Yibai stayed at the Mu family for 2 days, but Muchichi did not appear in front of Zhou Yibai. The servant meant that Muchichi was sick, so she was not in the villa. Zhou Yibai asked Arhua to prepare a gift for him, and took the gift directly to the Mu family to attend Mr. Mu's birthday party. Bai Shui came to the Mu family early. As the eldest lady of the Zhu family, there was naturally no problem for her to come and attend Mr. Mu's banquet. She was dressed very beautifully today, as if she was the protagonist of the birthday party, and she attracted all the attention in the hall as soon as she appeared. Many socialites and rich ladies began to whisper when they saw Bai Shui's outfit, but Bai Shui didn't care and just took it as a compliment. Seeing Zhou Yibai coming, Bai Shui twisted her waist and walked towards Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai looked at Bai Shui who was approaching him and said coldly, "This is the old house of the Mu family. Don't offend the people here easily." Bai Shui had an unpleasant experience with Mu Chichi before, and Zhou Yibai reminded Bai Shui not to do that kind of thing again, otherwise, he didn't know how to deal with Bai Shui's aftermath. Bai Shui bit her lip lightly, looked at Zhou Yibai and said, "Yibai, I definitely won't offend anyone. If Mu Chichi hadn't deliberately looked for me." The seventh day. Before Bai Shui could finish her words, she saw Mu Chichi coming in with Mu Qian's arm around her. She attended the banquet today in her chooky look, and her ugly face was still recognizable in the upper class. After all, she had been sitting in the position of the third young lady of the Zhou family with this face before. Bai Shui couldn't believe her eyes. She actually saw Chuki at the Mu family's banquet. Why did this woman appear at Mr. Mu's birthday party? Bai Shui's words made Zhou Yibai look towards the door. When he saw Mu Chichi holding Mu Qianjun's arm and talking and laughing, an inexplicable emotion filled Zhou Yibai's heart. He narrowed his eyes, and his dark pupils flashed with coldness. The seventh day of the new year is indeed related to the Mu family. Yibai, looking at the way she is with Mr. Mu, could it be that she is? When Bai Shui saw Zhou Yibai looking in the direction of Mu Chichi, a trace of contempt flashed across her eyes, and she said to Zhou Yibai in a meaningful way. When she said this, she actually wanted to tell Zhou Yibai that Chuki was a fickle woman. Zhou Yibai ignored Bai Shui, raised his foot and walked towards Mu Chichi. His coming. Mu Qian saw Zhou Yibai walking towards him out of the corner of his eye, and he turned his head to remind Mu Chichi. "Zhou Yibai really misses me." Mu Chichi tilted her head, looked at Mu Qian, wrinkled her nose and said cutely. Mu Qian looked at Mu Chichi's ugly face, raised his hand, and touched Mu Chichi's hair tenderly. "Go and have fun, just don't overdo it." "I know." Mu Chichi made a face at Mu Qian, then walked straight towards the dessert area, completely ignoring Zhou Yibai. When Zhou Yibai saw that Mu Chichi treated him as heir, his handsome face instantly turned dark. Why is this woman so close to Mu Qian? "Yibai, are you going to look for Chuki?" When Bai Shui saw Zhou Yibai walking towards Mu Chichi, she grabbed Zhou Yibai's arm and asked. This ugly woman Chuki actually dared to show up. She really doesn't know how to live or die. Zhou Yibai pushed Bai Shui's hand away and walked towards Mu Chichi. When Bai Shui saw that Zhou Yibai ignored her, she stomped her feet in anger and looked at Mu Chichi with fierce eyes. Mu Chichi noticed Bai Shui's gaze towards her. She raised her eyebrows and looked at Bai Shui with a provocative smile. She wanted to provoke Bai Shui, otherwise how could Bai Shui lose control at the banquet? How could she make Bai Shui lose her reputation? Even Zhou Yibai couldn't save Bai Shui. The seventh day. Bai Shui's eyes were red as she stared at Mu Chichi. What is your relationship with Mu Qian? Just as Bai Shui and Mu Chichi were looking at each other, Zhou Yibai had arrived in front of Mu Chichi without anyone knowing. Upon hearing this, Mu Chichi looked directly at Zhou Yibai but did not speak. Speak up, what is your relationship with Mu Qian? Seeing that Mu Chichi ignored him, Zhou Yi's white phoenix eyes flashed with coldness, and he stretched out his hand directly towards Mu Chichi. But before the man's hand touched Mu Chichi, it was waved away by Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi looked at Zhou Yibai with a cold expression. Sir, do I know you well? Why should I answer your question? Chapter 20. Are you trying to frame me like last time? The seventh day. Zhou Yibai was infuriated by Mu Chichi's tone. A creepy chill rolled over the man's body, and he directly pressured Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi ignored him directly. She walked towards Zhou Yibai with the dessert in her hand. Zhou Yibai had never been ignored by Mu Chichi like this before. The man frowned and directly grabbed Mu Chichi's wrist and pulled the woman into his arms. Zhou Yibai's actions angered Mu Chichi. Zhou Yibai, are you sick? You became more arrogant after you hooked up with Mu Qian. Mu Chichi listened to Zhou Yibai's jealous voice with contempt in her eyes. Yeah, after getting close to President Mu, I became more arrogant. Does the third young master have any objections? Don't talk to me like that. Third master should have told me in advance what tone I would use when speaking to you. Mu Chichi sneered and pushed Zhou Yibai away again. She looked at Zhou Yibai's face and wanted to beat him up. Is that you, Moon God? Zhou Yibai looked at the ugly face in front of him, but found that he could not remember what she looked like before. The woman who devoted herself to him and prepared meals for him every day and waited eagerly for him to eat seemed to have disappeared. She changed from the moment she filed for divorce. No comment. Mu Chichi raised her foot and stepped on Zhou Yibai's instep, pretending not to care. The slight stinging feeling made Zhou Yibai frown, but in the end the man said nothing. He raised his hand and wanted to touch the woman's face, but Mu Chichi avoided Zhou Yibai and went upstairs. Zhou Yibai put his hand down, and his handsome face showed no emotion. Why should he be led by her? Ever since the divorce, he has been thinking about Chuki, fearing that she would not be able to survive alone in the capital. However, the woman seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth, and no matter how hard he looked for her, he couldn't find her. When she appeared again, she appeared at Mu Lao's birthday party holding Mu Qian's hand. Third Master, Miss Mu did not attend Mr. Mu's birthday banquet today. Our Huo walked towards Zhou Yibai and spoke to him respectfully. Are you really sick? Zhu Yi asked as a hint of darkness flashed across his black eyes. I'm not sure if it's true, but Miss Mu and Mr. Mu have a bad relationship. Mr. Mu intends to give the position of heir to the second miss of the Mu family. Third Master. As soon as our Huo finished speaking, Mu Weiwei's gentle voice sounded. Zhu Yibai looked up at Mu Weiwei. Mu Weiwei is dressed like a princess today. The white princess dress and the dazzling crystal hair crown, people who don't know would think today is Mu Weiwei's birthday. Miss Mu Zhu Yibai looked at Mu Weiwei and greeted her in a cold tone. Seeing Zhu Yibai's cold attitude towards her, Mu Weiwei bit her lip and said tenderly, I heard that my sister had some conflicts with third young master a few days ago. I hope you can forgive my sister. Since she came back after being missing for 3 years, her personality has become very strange. We all know that she was deceived by a man and suffered a great mental trauma. No matter what, I hope that the third young master will not care so much about my sister. Mu Weiwei's implication was to tell Zhu Yibai that Mu Chichi was fickle and mentally ill. Zhu Yibai glanced at Mu Weiwei and said in a cold tone, Ms. Mu has never had any grudge against me. Miss, you are worrying too much. After that, Zhu Yibai wanted to leave. Seeing that Zhu Yibai didn't want to talk to her anymore, Mu Weiwei bit her lip and said, Third Master, are you interested in cooperating with the Mu Group on the Lanshui project? Is the second miss in charge of the Mu Group? Zhu Yibai looked at Mu Weiwei with sharp eyes and asked. Mu Weiwei's face froze instantly. She explained, as a member of the Mu Group, I am qualified to participate in many things in the company. If third young master wants to cooperate with the Mu Group, I can send him the plan. No need. If you want to cooperate with the Mu Group, I hope Miss Mu will talk to me in person. Zhu Yibai directly refused Mu Weiwei to leave. Mu Weiwei's face was stiff, with a hint of anger on her pretty face. What's wrong with Zhu Yibai? Is he looking down on her? Although she is the second daughter of the Mu family, her status in the Mu family is no lower than that of Mu Chichi. She took the initiative to show her goodwill, but Zhu Yibai seemed not to see her, which really made Mu Weiwei feel uncomfortable. The location of the second floor at this time. Mu Chichi just saw the conversation between Mu Weiwei and Zhu Yibai. She knew very well what Mu Weiwei was thinking. Mu Weiwei wants to marry Zhu Yibai. What a man who attracts all kinds of people. Mu Chichi looked away and walked towards the bathroom. 2 minutes later, Mu Chichi came out of the bathroom and saw Bai Shui standing at the door. The seventh day, long time no see. Bai Shui looked at Mu Chichi with a smile on her face. Mu Chichi turned on the faucet and washed her hands slowly, as if she didn't see Bai Shui. Chuki, but you don't want to see me. Seeing that Mu Chichi ignored her, Bai Shui walked forward and continued to seek presents. After Mu Chichi washed her hands, she turned off the faucet and looked at Bai Shui. I have been waiting for you since I showed up at the Mu family, do you know that? Bai Shui looked at Mu Chichi, who was different from before, and her back suddenly tensed up. She looked at Mu Chichi and asked, You seem to have changed, Chuki. After divorcing Yibai, what means did you use to get close to the eldest young master of the Mu family? Bai Shui asked with a gloomy face as she looked at Mu Chichi's ugly face. Of course, it's because of my ugly face. If you also want to get close to the eldest young master of the Mu family, but are afraid that he won't want you, you can try to destroy your face first, then take off all your clothes and lie on his bed. Maybe he will look at you twice. The seventh day. Mu Chichi's words angered Bai Shui. She raised her hand and was about to swing it at Mu Chichi's face. Seeing this, Muchichi grabbed Bai Shui's hand and asked with a smile, "What's wrong? Are you angry because of shame? Let me go." Not only did Muchichi not let go, but she squeezed even harder. As the pain hit her, Bai Shui's face turned pale. "Chuki, if you dare to touch me, Yibai will kill you." "Zhou Yibai? Do you think I'm afraid of him? Even in front of Zhou Yibai, I can slap you twice, believe it or not. Do you dare?" Bai Shui didn't believe what Muchichi said. "She likes Zhou Yibai so much, do you dare to touch her?" Muchichi looked at the disdainful expression on Bai Shui's face. Her eyes were cold and she took action directly. Bai Shui was slapped in the face by Muchichi. She opened her eyes in disbelief, covered her face, and looked at Muchichi fiercely. She actually dared to hit her? "Do you want me to continue?" Muchichi shook her wrist and asked Bai Shui. Bai Shui's eyes were red, and there was viciousness on her pretty face. "Chuki, you're dead." Chapter 21. How did Chuki and the eldest lady of the Mu family? "Are you trying to frame me like last time?" Muchichi shook her wrist and looked at Bai Shui with an extremely cold smile. Bai Shui looked at the contempt on Muchichi's ugly face and her body suddenly tensed up. "Chuki, you forced me to do this." "Yeah, I'm pushing you. Do you dare to do it again? Zhou Yibai seems to care about me a lot. Do you think I should go back to Zhou Yibai? After all, I was once his wife. Don't even think about it." When Bai Shui heard what Muchichi said, she was so angry that she wanted to hit Muchichi. Seeing Bai Shui like this, Muchichi sneered, "You really are unteachable." Bai Shui's jealousy has been ignited by Muchichi, and she will soon take action against Muchichi. "Do you want me to play this scene with you? Let's see what Zhou Yibai will do to me to protect you. Chuki, just wait for me, I will make sure you die without a complete corpse." Bai Shui's eyes flashed with a vicious cold light. She pointed at Muchichi, said these words to her, and then slammed herself against the wall. Seeing this, Muchichi crossed her arms over her chest and screamed towards the stairs. "Oh, that hurts." Bai Shui's face froze instantly. She looked at Muchichi with red eyes, as if she didn't expect Muchichi to do such a thing. Seeing Bai Shui looking at her stiffly, Muchichi stroked her chin and said with a half smile, "I'll help you call them. Zhou Yibai and the others will be here soon. Do you want me to do it myself? It will look more realistic this way." Muchichi said this coldly, then walked up to Bai Shui, grabbed her hair, and slammed her hard against the wall. Bai Shui didn't expect Muchichi would do this to her. She was dizzy from the hit on the head, and a mouthful of blood got stuck in her throat and spurted out. "Chuki, what are you doing? Yibai, save me." Just when Bai Shui wanted to tear Muchichi to pieces, Zhou Yibai appeared. Muchichi already knew that Zhou Yibai would be the first to appear. She let go of Bai Shui's hair, patted her palms, and tilted her head to look at Zhou Yibai. "Didn't third young master see this? Doesn't this scene seem familiar? I pushed her down the stairs in the same way, didn't I?" Muchichi's words made Zhou Yibai's face suddenly gloomy. He looked at Shirayuki. Bai Shui saw Zhou Yibai looking at her, and she choked up and said, "Yibai, save me, Chuki wants to kill me. She blames me for the divorce between you two." Zhou Yibai lowered his eyelids and said coldly, "Chuki, don't challenge my patience anymore. She actually did such a thing in the Mu family. If it offended the Mu family, he would not be able to help Muchichi." Muchichi looked at Zhou Yibai's stern face and said with a smile, "Yes, there will be a gift for Bai Shui later. The third young master will know what gift I will give you in a while." Muchichi clapped her hands, and after she finished speaking to Zhou Yibai, she raised her foot and kicked Bai Shui's calf fiercely. Bai Shui looked at Muchichi with a pale face. This woman actually dared to do this to Zhou Yibai in front of her. Does she want to die? "Yibai, it hurts so much. She just grabbed my head and slammed it against the wall, as if she was going to kill me." Bai Shui trembled as she got up from the ground, stumbled towards Zhou Yibai, grabbed Zhou Yibai's arm and choked with sobs. Zhou Yibai looked at Bai Shui's pale face and said expressionlessly, "What did you say to Chu Chi? Why did she attack you?" Zhou Yibai's question made Bai Shui's face freeze instantly. Zhou Yibai said this as if he was doubting her. He shouldn't believe that it's the seventh day. "I didn't. Chu Chi hates me, so he wants to kill me when he sees me." Bai Shui's eyes were red as she explained to Zhou Yibai with tears in her eyes. Muchichi sneered, "Yes, I just want your life. Remember to come downstairs and see the gift I gave you. You will definitely like it. She wanted to see how long Bai Shui could pretend. When all the computer screens in the hall are filled with Bai Shui's video, I wonder how she will act. After Mu Chichi left with contempt, Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi's back with a gloomy and terrifying face. Yibai, I'm in so much pain. Bai Shui looked at Mu Chichi's leaving back and felt very nervous. The 7th day of the new year is different from before. The feeling she gave Bai Shui was very similar to that of the eldest daughter of the Mu family. What's going on? How could Chu Chi and the eldest daughter of the Mu family? Bai Shui didn't have time to think about it. She wanted to leave here now. She always felt that Chuki's appearance here was as if he was taking revenge on her. I'll have someone take you back. Zhou Yibai didn't notice the panic in Bai Shui's eyes. He picked up his phone and wanted to call someone to take her away. But Bai Shui grabbed Zhou Yibai's arm and asked Zhou Yibai to take her back to Zhu's house. Yibai, can you take me back? I don't want anyone else. Zhou Yibai frowned and was about to push Bai Shui's hand away when Erhua came over with a serious expression. Third master, downstairs, the video downstairs. What video? Zhou Yibai asked as his black eyes darkened. The eldest young lady's video. Erhua looked past Zhou Yibai and his gaze fell on Bai Shui, who had a confused look on her face. Bai Shui's expression suddenly changed. She grabbed her clothes and pretended to be calm and asked, Ahuo, what did you say? My video? What video of mine? The third young master and the first young master's madam will know when they go downstairs. Erhua glanced at Bai Shui, as if he didn't know how to answer Zhou Yibai's questions. He just let Zhou Yibai take Bai Shui downstairs and he would know. Looking at Erhua, who was hesitating, Zhou Yibai had a gloomy face and went downstairs with Bai Shui. When the two walked downstairs and saw the video playing in the hall, Zhou Yibai's stern face was immediately chilled, while Bai Shui opened her eyes wide and leaned against the wall weakly. The video that plays in a loop is of Bai Shui and Chu Chi. At Old Lady Zhu's birthday party, Chuki was accused of pushing Bai Shui down the stairs, causing the eldest son of the Zhu family to have a miscarriage of his only child. Chuki was also subjected to cyber violence for this, and then the third son of the Zhu family divorced Chuki. However, the video being played at this time was different from the one on the internet. In the video, Bai Shui seemed to say something to Chu Chi, and then she grabbed Chu Chi's hand and rolled down from the upstairs. The scene froze on Bai Shui lying on the ground covered in blood, with a provocative expression towards Chu Chi upstairs. All the guests were stunned and began to whisper. No, that's not the case. Someone is framing me. When Bai Shui saw that everyone was looking at her, she was so scared that she started shaking all over, shaking her head and shouting. Mu Chichi, hiding in the crowd, crossed her arms and looked coldly at Bai Shui, who was out of control. She was quite happy when she framed her. Why is she so sad now? The scene in the video changed, showing the confrontation between Bai Shui and Chu Chi. Chapter 22, The 7th Day, Why Did It Become So Strange? In the scene, Bai Shui banged her head against the wall, and then Chu Chi said he would help her. Then Zhou Yibai appeared, and Bai Shui started acting. At this moment, Bai Shui's image completely collapsed. Everyone in your circle says that Bai Shui is kind and gentle. Who would have thought that this woman who seems gentle to outsiders is actually this kind of person? Everyone in the living room started pointing fingers at Bai Shui. Bai Shui was shaking all over, tears streaming down her face. Her pretty face looked extremely aggrieved and pitiful. It was Chuki who framed me. Yibai, I was framed. Is it a frame-up? Let's verify the authenticity of the video. It's not a frame-up. It was the eldest young lady who harmed the third young lady. I took the video. As soon as Bai Shui finished speaking, someone in the crowd said this. Bai Shui was so angry that she was about to continue speaking when a servant came over and pointed at Bai Shui's face and shouted. Are you Wumar's niece? Erhua, who was standing behind Zhou Yibai, recognized that the maid was the niece of Wumar, the old servant of the Zhu family. I'm Xiaomai. I took the picture of the eldest young lady framing the third young lady. Xiaomai's words made Bai Shui's face turn pale. She lost control and shouted at Xiaomai, You took Chuki's money to frame me, didn't you? I didn't take any money from anyone, I told the truth. Bai Shui grabbed Zhou Yibai's arm and shouted to him, Yibai, you have to believe me, it was Chuki who framed me. Mu Chichi touched his chin, looked at Bai Shui coldly, and couldn't help but sneered 3 times. Mu Qian came over, looked at Mu Chichi and said, Happy. It's okay. I want to see how Zhou Yibai protects Bai Shui. When Mu Chichi said this, her eyes grew colder. Mu Qian looked at the expression on Mu Chichi's face with complexity in his eyes. Chichi, do you still care about Zhou Yibai? Mu Chichi's body suddenly tensed up. She clenched her fists and said in a cold tone, no. She didn't care about Zhou Yibai. She just wanted to see what Zhou Yibai's expression would be when he saw Bai Shui's true face, that's all. But the expression on your face seems to tell me that you still care about Zhou Yibai very much. There was a hint of complexity in Mu Qian's eyes, and his tone was filled with worry. Chichi, I don't want you to continue to like Zhou Yibai. He was very blind and hurt Mu Chichi like that. Mu Qian disliked Zhou Yibai. Brother, don't worry, I won't love Zhou Yibai anymore. Being hurt once is enough. Chuki, you are harming me, aren't you? There was no expression of joy or anger on Zhou Yibai's handsome face. Bai Shui's heart instantly turned cold when she saw Zhou Yibai like this. With red eyes, she suddenly looked in the direction of Mu Chichi, pointed at Mu Chichi's nose and yelled. Mu Chichi raised her ugly face and smiled gracefully. You said I framed you, so I framed you. Mu Chichi obviously didn't want to say so much nonsense to Bai Shui. Her calmness was in sharp contrast to Bai Shui's anxiety. When Bai Shui saw Mu Chichi making this expression, the people around her looked at Bai Shui with obvious condemnation. And all this was caused by Mu Chichi. Bai Shui pinched her thigh hard and suddenly burst into tears. Chuki, I know you are jealous of Yibai's kindness to me, but why do you want to hurt me like this? You've already caused my miscarriage. Do you really want to kill me? Bai Shui said this with a painful expression on her face. Mu Chichi looked at Bai Shui's seemingly painful expression and said slowly, is your life valuable? You don't need to act in front of me, madam. I've already called the police. You keep saying it's a frame-up, so let the police investigate the truth. Bai Shui's face turned pale. She grabbed the clothes on her chest, pretending to be in pain, and then fell into Zhou Yibai's arms. Yibai, I am in so much pain. Mu Chichi chuckled, Boss Mu has prepared a doctor for the eldest young lady, don't worry. Bai Shui almost broke her teeth. She actually blocked all her paths. Show it to the eldest young lady. Mu Chichi asked the doctor to come and see Bai Shui. Just when the doctor wanted to examine Bai Shui, Zhou Yibai, who had been silent the whole time, said in a cold tone, I will give you an explanation for this matter. After saying that, he looked at Bai Shui. The man's eyes were extremely cold and terrifying at this moment. When Bai Shui saw Zhou Yibai looking at her with such a terrifying look, she was a little scared. After Chuki hurt her like this, Zhou Yibai would definitely not believe her now. The more Bai Shui thought about it, the angrier she became. She wished she could tear Mu Chichi into pieces. Yibai. Go back and explain all this to me. Zhou Yibai said this coldly and asked someone to take Bai Shui away. Come back to Zhu's house with me. Even though Bai Shui was unwilling, she had no choice but to be taken away by Zhou Yibai's men. After Bai Shui was taken away, Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi and asked Mu Chichi to go back to the Zhou family with him. Mu Chichi looked at Zhou Yibai, tilted her head, and said with a half-smile, why should I follow you back to the Zhou family? Does the third young master intend to kneel down and apologize to me? Zhou Yibai looked into Mu Chichi's beautiful eyes and said slowly, Chuki, come home with me. Go home? When Mu Chichi heard this word for the first time, she suddenly found it ridiculous. Third master, I have no home. Mu Chichi tilted her head and looked at Zhou Yibai's handsome face. In Zhou Yibai's eyes, the woman's ugly face was filled with ridicule and mockery. Zhou Yibai's heart felt like it was being strangled. His eyes were red and he raised his hand, as if he wanted to touch Mu Chichi's face. He wrongly blamed Chuki. What does third young master want to do? Mu Chichi looked at Zhou Yibai who was extending his hand towards her and asked with her black eyes without any emotion. She actually saw guilt in Zhou Yibai's eyes. She found it very ridiculous. Why would Zhou Yibai feel guilty? Zhou Yibai's expression gradually darkened. He pursed his lips and looked at Mu Chichi, and asked calmly, where do you live now? Third master, why don't you go back and think about how to help Bai Shui with the lawsuit? Before Mu Chichi could say anything, Mu Qian came over and reminded Zhou Yibai with sharp eyes. He will not let Bai Shui and Zhou Yibai go. I'll let Bai Shui apologize to you. Zhou Yibai meant to believe that Mu Chichi was framed by Bai Shui. Mu Chichi was a little surprised. She thought Zhou Yibai would spare no effort to help Bai Shui clear her name. Or, when it comes to interests, Zhou Yibai can abandon even the woman he loves without blinking an eye. Thinking of this, Mu Chichi looked at Zhou Yibai with an icy cold gaze. Zhou Yibai noticed that Mu Chichi looked at him with a cold gaze, and he felt a little confused. The seventh day of the new year, why did it become so strange? The seventh day of the Lunar New Year had never been like this before. Chapter 23, Don't you know what your identity is? Then the third young master must ask the first young master's mistress to prepare an apology to me. I'm not an easy person to deal with. You have to kowtow to me 3 times and 9 times before I'll consider forgiving the eldest young lady. Mu Chichi said with a sneer, not looking at how ugly Zhou Yibai's face was at the moment, and set her sights on Mu Qian. I'm a little tired, I want to go back and rest first. Mu Qian touched the top of Mu Chichi's head and said in a gentle tone, okay, I'll have someone take you back. The intimate behavior of the two made Zhou Yibai's face instantly cold. Why are Chuki and Mu Qian so close? The seventh day. When Mu Qian took Mu Chichi's hand and was about to take her away, Zhou Yibai grabbed Mu Chichi's hand and called her name in a cold voice. Mu Chichi frowned and pushed Zhou Yibai away. Third master, do you have anything else to ask me? Come home with me. Zhou Yibai had a straight face and gave orders in a cold tone. He didn't care what the relationship between Chu Qi and Mu Qian was. In short, he would never allow his wife to be with another man. Your own wife? Zhou Yibai was made quite upset by his own thoughts. Third master, are you in love with me? Mu Chichi let go of Mu Qian's hand, raised her foot, and walked towards Zhu Yi. The woman's ugly face moved closer to Zhou Yibai. The smell of her perfume. Zhou Yibai narrowed his eyes, grasped Mu Chichi's chin, and put his handsome face close to the corner of the woman's lips. He smelled the scent of Mu Chichi from Chuki. His nose was very sensitive. After all, he had had sex with Mu Chichi and they had a lot of interactions, so he smelled the luxurious scent of Mu Chichi's perfume. Zhou Yibai, what are you doing? Mu Chichi originally wanted to make Zhou Yibai unhappy, but unexpectedly Zhou Yibai took advantage of the situation to annoy Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi had a gloomy face and raised her foot, wishing she could kick Zhou Yibai to death. Zhou Yibai stared at Mu Chichi with a cold face, and asked with a hint of coolness on his lips, you smell like Mu Chichi. Chuki is indeed related to the Mu family. Mu Chichi's back tightened and the hand hanging by her side suddenly clenched. Zhou Yibai discovered it. Third master, please stay away from her. Just when Mu Chichi didn't know how to explain to Zhou Yibai, Mu Qian reached out and pulled Mu Chichi into his arms, blocking Zhou Yibai's sight. Zhou Yibai narrowed his eyes coldly and stretched out his hand to grab Mu Chichi into his arms. Mu Chichi asked coldly, Zhou Yibai, we are divorced, and I am disgusted by you now. When Zhou Yibai heard Mu Chichi say that she was disgusted with him, a layer of frost appeared on the man's handsome face. He stared into Mu Chichi's eyes and asked, don't be willful, come home with me. Want to help Shirayuki? Mu Chichi crossed her arms and asked with a sneer on her face. Zhou Yibai said calmly, if she framed you, she should apologize to you. Then let her come to the Mu family tomorrow to kowtow and apologize to me, and you as well. When Mu Chichi said this, her eyes were extremely sharp. Zhou Yibai didn't expect that Mu Chichi would let him and Bai Shui kneel down to her. He looked at her with a serious look and asked, do you want me to kneel down and apologize to you? Shouldn't third master kneel down and apologize to me when he believed Bai Shui's words and misunderstood me? I was also forced to kneel down and apologize to Bai Shui. Mu Chichi thought of how Zhou Yibai didn't trust her at the beginning, and she wanted to slap Zhou Yibai to death. Zhou Yibai looked at the woman's ugly face and said indifferently, okay, come home with me. Mu Chichi laughed softly, why should I go home with you? That's your Zhou family, not my home. I have no relationship with the third young master any longer. After saying that, he no longer paid attention to Zhou Yibai and left taking Mu Qian's hand. Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi's back and slowly clenched his fists. The seventh day, Mu Chichi. Third master, the old lady asked you to return to the old house immediately. Arho walked in from outside and said to Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai asked coldly, because of Bai Shui's matter. Yes, the matter of the eldest young lady caused a big commotion on the internet. Zhou Yibai said with a gloomy look, tell Mr. Mu that we will go back to the Zhou family. Arho went over and told Mu Lao's people that Zhou Yibai needed to go home to take care of some things, and then he left the Mu family with Zhou Yibai. Mu Weiwei felt unwilling when she knew Zhou Yibai had left the Mu family. Mu Weiwei felt very uncomfortable with Zhou Yibai's lukewarm attitude towards her. She must make sure that General Mu's marriage partner becomes her. Since Mu Qiqi was unwilling to marry into the Zhou family, she took the initiative to tell Mr. Mu that she was willing to represent the Mu family in marriage with the Zhou family. By that time, with the Zhou family as the leader, Mu Qiqi will have no chance of becoming the heir of the Mu family. Mu Qiqi did not come to attend Mr. Mu's birthday party today. Although Mu Qian explained the situation, due to Wang Mai and Mu Weiwei's exaggeration, Mr. Mu was very angry about Mu Qiqi's behavior. The incident involving Bai Shui's video happened at Mr. Mu's birthday party, so Mr. Mu blamed it all on Mu Qiqi. After the banquet, Mr. Mu asked the housekeeper to call Mu Qiqi and told her to come to the old house to see him immediately as long as she was not dead. Mu Qiqi and Mu Qian had just returned to the villa. She took off her disguise and was about to go to the company. When she received a call from Mu Lao, Mu Qiqi frowned and looked at Mu Qian with deep eyes. I chose to take action today because I knew that Grandpa would be angry. And the reason why Mr. Mu was angry was definitely due to Mu Weiwei and the others, which Mu Qiqi had already anticipated. Then have you thought of a solution? Mu Qian asked with worry in his eyes. Nature. Mu Qiqi will not let Mu Weiwei and Wang Mai's evil plan succeed. Brother, you don't need to worry about me. I will naturally go and explain to Grandpa. After Mu Qiqi finished speaking, she drove to the Mu family's old house to meet Mr. Mu. When she arrived at the old house, she saw Mu Weiwei already waiting for her at the gate. Mu Weiwei pretended to be surprised and looked at Mu Qiqi. Sister, aren't you sick? You don't look sick to me. Mu Weiwei's words made Mu Qiqi's eyes flash with coldness. She walked forward and slapped Mu Weiwei in the face. Mu Weiwei covered her face and glared at Mu Qiqi with an angry expression. Mu Qiqi, what do you mean? I told you not to call me sister. I don't remember my mother giving birth to a sister like you. You don't know what your identity is. You. Mu Qiqi's humiliation made Mu Weiwei's face instantly become hideous and ferocious. Seeing that Mu Weiwei was so angry, Mu Qiqi walked closer to her and asked with a smile, after I take over the Mu group, all the projects in your hands will be handed over to me. I will give you 3 days to hand over all the projects in your hands to me. Chapter 24 officially acknowledges Mu Qiqi's status as the heir. Why should I hand over my project to you? Grandpa won't agree with you doing this to me. I am the heir of the Mu family. I am in charge of the entire Mu family. How much say do you think Grandpa has to help you? Mu Qiqi stared at Mu Weiwei and asked with a smile. Mu Weiwei's face turned very ugly. Mu Qiqi, why are you so arrogant? Just wait and see, the heir of the Mu family will not be you, but me. Oh? Is that so? You still want to snatch the position of heir from me? Mu Weiwei, have you forgotten what you are? A thing born to a mistress, and yet you still dream of becoming an heir. Mu Qiqi raised her foot and walked towards Mu Weiwei, her eyes sharp as she asked, do you know how my mother died? Mu Weiwei's face suddenly changed and her back suddenly tensed up. She pinched her palms and pretended to be calm and said, why? Do you still want to put the blame of your mother's death on me? Your mother was crazy, who knows how she died? Whoever harms my mother, I will make her pay it back 1,000 times. Mu Weiwei had a gloomy face and pinched her palms without saying a word. So the person behind this had better hide from me. If I find out, I will crush her neck. Did Mu Qiqi discover something? After Mu Qiqi pushed Mu Weiwei's body away, he walked past her and left. Mu Weiwei looked at Mu Qiqi's leaving back, her eyes filled with a terrifying and chilling look. Mu Qiqi, if you miss your mother so much, I will definitely send you downstairs to accompany your mother. In the living room of the Mu family's old house. Mr. Mu was wearing a traditional Chinese tang suit with red embroidery today, and he looked very energetic. When he saw Mu Qiqi coming in, he raised the crutch in his hand and threw it at Mu Qiqi. Seeing this, Mu Qiqi immediately dodged the crutch thrown by Mu Lao. You dare to avoid it? Grandpa, I'm not a fool. If I don't avoid you, will you hit me? Mu Qiqi spoke to Mr. Mu with an expressionless face. Grandpa, I said my sister was pretending to be sick and not attending your birthday party. Seeing how energetic she is, who said she was sick? Mu Weiwei walked in from outside and said to Mr. Mu. Mr. Mu asked gloomily, you pretended to be sick and deliberately didn't attend my birthday party. And you ruined my birthday party. Grandpa's birthday party was well organized, how could it be ruined? Sister, stop pretending. I know everything. You knew the third young master's ex-wife Chuki. It was you who asked my eldest brother to bring her to Grandpa's birthday party and deliberately asked her to play those videos that were unfavorable to the Zhou family's eldest young lady at the party. How much do you hate Grandpa? You actually ruined Grandpa's birthday party like this. Mu Weiwei covered her mouth and looked at Mu Chichi, clicking her tongue and shaking her head. Grandpa, I admit that I pretended to be sick, but I pretended to be sick because I planned to give you a big gift tonight. Now that I have been misunderstood like this, I can only give you the gift in advance. After hearing what Mu Chichi said, Mu Weiwei sneered, what gift? Sister, don't lie to Grandpa here. Still pretending here? Mu Chichi, you are so disgusting. Mu Chichi asked someone to bring the documents she had prepared from her car. Mu Weiwei's heart sank when she saw Mu Chichi's actions. Looking at Mu Chichi's expression, could it be that she was really pretending to be sick to prepare a surprise for the old man? After about 2 or 3 minutes, the servant brought out the documents that Mu Chichi had prepared for Mr. Mu from his car. Mu Weiwei looked at the document in Mu Chichi's hand and asked with disdain on her face, Sister, is this the gift you prepared for Grandpa? I thought it was some rare treasure, but it turned out to be just a document. Mu Chichi ignored Mu Weiwei and just handed the document in her hand to Mr. Mu. Grandpa, just take a look and you'll know what gift I prepared for you. Mr. Mu looked at Mu Chichi with half belief and half doubt, then took the document in his hand. When Mr. Mu finished reading the document, his dark eyes were filled with a deep and gloomy light. You won the South Australia project. Yes, I had a video conference with the South Australia CEO today and told him my plan. After listening to it, he said he really wanted to cooperate with our company. He will come to cooperate with our company tomorrow. South Australia? The big project that the Mu Group had spent half a year trying to get was actually won by Mu Chichi? Sister, how did you get the South Australia CEO to agree to cooperate with our company? You didn't use any inferior means, did you? I know you've been missing for 3 years and encountered a lot of things, but you can't embarrass our Mu Group. Mu Weiwei implied that Mu Chichi used her body to win the project, bringing shame to the Mu family. Mu Weiwei, only someone with your IQ would use such a despicable method to win the cooperation of the company. Did you win the cooperation in the past in this way? Otherwise, how could you be so skilled in the business? Mu Chichi, you slandered me. Mu Weiwei originally wanted to throw dirty water on Mu Chichi, but who knew that Mu Chichi would actually pour the dirty water on herself? Mu Weiwei was so angry that she was shaking all over. If it weren't for the presence of Mr. Mu, she would definitely rush up and slap Mu Chichi. When Mu Chichi saw that Mu Weiwei was so angry with her, she smiled very gently. Are you angry out of shame? Grandfather. Mu Weiwei gritted her teeth and looked at Mr. Mu. Mu Lao glanced at Mu Weiwei and asked Mu Chichi, will the boss of Nanao come to sign a contract with our Mu family tomorrow? The contract has been sent, and the other party has no complaints. It seems that your elder brother has taught you very well. Mu Qian is a business genius. He has been managing all affairs of the Mu Group since he was 20 years old. Although he is not a member of the Mu family, old Mu still likes Mu Qian very much. Big brother is naturally very good. After all, your company lacks experience. Although you have won the South Australia project this time, you can't be proud. I see. Learn more from your eldest brother, and in a month, officially take over the entire Mu Group. When Mr. Mu said this, he formally acknowledged Mu Chichi's status as the successor. Mu Weiwei's face suddenly changed. She grabbed the clothes at her side and her whole body was shaking. She has worked so hard for so long, how could Mu Chichi take away her position as heir? Mu Chichi noticed the distortion on Mu Weiwei's face, and she grinned at her. When Mu Weiwei saw Mu Chichi looking at her like this, her eyes suddenly turned red. Mu Chichi, you bitch, just wait for me, I won't let you have an easy time. Grandpa, Mu Weiwei's position should be demoted. Mu Chichi, what do you mean? I have contributed a lot to the company over the years. What qualifications do you have to demote me? Chapter 25 Useless Things. When Mu Weiwei heard that Mu Chichi was going to demote her, she was so angry that she pointed at Mu Chichi's nose and started cursing. She had worked hard to get to this position today, and she would never allow it to be ruined by Mu Chichi. My virtue does not match my position. Mu Chichi handed another document to Mr. Mu with a cold face. Mu Weiwei looked at the document that Mu Chichi handed to Mr. Mu, and her body suddenly tensed up. She clenched her fists and looked at Mu Chichi with a gloomy and terrifying expression. What did Mu Chichi show Grandpa? Weiwei, you embezzled 100 million from the company. What did you do with it? General Mu handed the document in his hand to Mu Weiwei and asked her in a cold voice. Mu Weiwei's face changed slightly. She looked at Mu Lao and stammered, it's for the startup capital of the Lai Shui project. I discussed this with you in advance, Grandpa. The startup capital for the Lai Shui project is only tens of millions, but you took away 100 million. You even dared to lie in front of Grandpa. You are really amazing. Mu Chichi, you want to frame me. I know you dislike me in every way, and you just want to drive me out of the Mu family. Grandpa, I didn't lie, I really did it for the Lai Shui project. You bought a small house abroad a week ago for 200 million yuan. I also bought stocks and lost tens of millions. You go back first. Mu Weiwei was trembling all over after hearing what Mu Chichi said. She opened her eyes wide and looked at Mu Chichi in disbelief. Why does Mu Chichi know all this? Mu Weiwei pinched her palms, wishing she could tear Mu Chichi into pieces. Grandpa is planning to deal with Mu Weiwei himself. I will solve her problems. Mr. Mu looked at Mu Chichi with a cold face. When Mu Weiwei saw that Mr. Mu was defending her, she raised her chin and looked at Mu Chichi with disdain. Mu Chichi, do you still want to fight me? Besides Mu Qian, who else in the entire Mu family protects you? Grandpa, I hope you won't forget who the heir of the Mu family is. Mu Chichi knew that Mu Weiwei was provoking her, but she seemed not to see it and looked directly at Mu Lao. Mu Lao said with a gloomy face, if you don't have the ability, the successor will naturally change. You'd better have this ability. After saying that, he asked the housekeeper to send Mu Chichi out. Mu Chichi was not sad either. After all, this has become the norm. Mu Weiwei and Wang Mai were very cunning and managed to coax Mr. Mu into standing completely on their side. It was precisely because Mr. Mu was backing them up that the two dared to shout in front of Mu Chichi. The Mu family can only be mine. Mu Chichi raised her chin and looked at Mr. Mu with sharp eyes. Mr. Mu looked at Mu Chichi. The indifference in the woman's eyes was very similar to that of his deceased son. Mu Lao said with a gloomy face, then show us your ability. Just a South Australia project is not enough for you to gain a firm foothold in the Mu family. If you are willing to marry the third young master of the Zhou family, I will not interfere in the affairs of the Mu group in the future. Grandpa, what's going on? Why do you have to let Mu Chichi and Zhou Yibai get married? Mu Weiwei's eyes were flushed red, and she looked at Mu Chichi while pinching her palms. Mu Chichi frowned and looked at Mr. Mu. She didn't understand why Mr. Mu was so keen on her marrying Zhou Yibai. Mu Chichi pinched her nose and said in a cold tone, Grandpa, I will not marry Zhou Yibai. Did she and him just divorce? They were still married. Mu Lao's face was gloomy, and his eyes were sharp. Since you don't want to, I can only let Weiwei marry into the Zhou family. Mu Chichi's expression changed slightly, while Mu Weiwei looked at Mr. Mu with joy. She had mentioned this to Mr. Mu before, but Mr. Mu didn't say anything. Mu Weiwei thought there was no hope. Now, hearing Mr. Mu say this on his own initiative, Mu Weiwei was extremely excited. Grandpa wants Mu Weiwei to marry into the Zhou family. Mu Chichi raised her chin, glanced at Mr. Mu, and asked coldly. Mu Lao explained calmly, since you don't want to, we can only let Weiwei marry into the Zhou family. Mu Chichi sneered, then let Mu Weiwei marry into the Zhou family. This is going to be a really good show. Mu Weiwei is getting married to Zhou Yibai? I'm afraid Bai Shui is going crazy. Bai Shui used such despicable means to drive Mu Chichi away. She originally wanted to marry Zhou Yibai and become his wife. Who knew that Mu Weiwei would appear now? Two dogs biting each other, Mu Chichi suddenly found it very interesting. When Mu Weiwei saw that Mu Chichi didn't object at all, she suddenly felt an inexplicable feeling in her heart. Did she think Mu Chichi would stop her? Could it be that she is planning something bad? Since you have no objection, I will go to the Zhou family in person tomorrow to discuss the marriage. Seeing that Mu Chichi didn't care at all, old Mu reminded her in a cold voice. Good. After Mu Chichi finished speaking, she looked at Mu Weiwei with sharp eyes. I will transfer Mu Weiwei to the warehouse department as a buyer, starting from the grassroots level. Grandpa should have no objection, right? Mu Chichi, you. Mu Weiwei's face changed slightly. She pointed at Mu Chichi and yelled angrily, then turned her gaze to Mu Lao. Mr. Mu glanced at Mu Weiwei, obviously trying to comfort her. Although Mu Weiwei was unwilling, she could only suppress her anger after being comforted by Mr. Mu. After all, she is the second daughter of the Mu family, so let her be demoted to the team leader of the finance department. Or stay in the finance department. Mu Chichi sneered, I don't allow Mu Weiwei to go to the finance department. Then I will be your assistant. That's a good idea. Grandfather. When Mu Chichi was not in the company, Mu Weiwei was the second in command in the Mu group besides Mu Qian. Now that she has become Mu Chichi's assistant, Mu Weiwei is naturally unhappy. Mr. Mu glanced at Mu Weiwei, obviously warning her. Mu Chichi has now returned to the Mu group and become the decision maker of the Mu group. For many things she decides, Mr. Mu cannot express any opinions, and Mu Weiwei is even less allowed. Mu Weiwei was unwilling to give in. She clenched her fist and muttered to Mu Lao, Grandpa, Mu Chichi is targeting me. If you let me become her assistant, won't that make Mu Chichi cause trouble for me? If you can do your job well, she won't bother you. Chichi, what do you think? Mr. Mu's tactic of retreating to advance is really brilliant. He knew that Mu Chichi was determined to kick Mu Weiwei out of the company. Now that Mr. Mu wanted Mu Weiwei to stay with Mu Chichi as an assistant, it would also be beneficial to Mu Weiwei. Once Mu Chichi is no longer capable of becoming the person in charge of the Mu group, Mr. Mu can immediately replace her with Mu Weiwei. Mu Chichi said calmly, just do as you say, Grandpa. My time is too valuable to be wasted on useless things like this. Useless things. Mu Weiwei's face suddenly became gloomy and terrifying. She suppressed the urge to kill Mu Chichi and lowered her head. When she marries Zhou Yibai and becomes the young lady of the Zhou family, with the help of the Zhou family, Mu Chichi, you can just die. Chapter 26. What on earth is this man playing at? When Mu Chichi left, she did not forget to glance at Mu Weiwei, who was lowering her head and seemed to be thinking about something. Even though she couldn't see Mu Weiwei's expression at the moment, Mu Chichi could guess what she was planning. Want to marry Zhou Yibai? Then have a good fight with Bai Shui first. Mu Chichi really wants to see the scene where Bai Shui and Mu Weiwei bite each other. It will definitely be very exciting. When Mu Chichi returned to the Mu family, she saw Zhou Yibai cooking for her in the kitchen. When Mu Chichi saw Zhou Yibai, her hands started to itch. When she thought of what Zhou Yibai had done for Bai Shui, she suddenly wanted to slap Zhou Yibai twice. Where is Chuki? When Mu Chichi was staring at Zhou Yibai's back in a daze with red eyes, Zhou Yibai walked to Mu Chichi's side without her knowing when. The man looked at Mu Chichi and asked in a cold voice. Mu Chichi came back to her senses and asked expressionlessly, what's the 7th day of the first lunar month? What is third young master talking about? Don't play along with me, I know you know Chuki. Zhou Yibai looked at Mu Chichi with sharp and cold eyes and said. Mu Chichi tilted her head, looked at Zhou Yibai and chuckled, Third master, you are really weird. You and her are divorced, so why are you looking for her? Oh? Could it be about the video at Grandpa's party? Didn't she want Bai Shui to apologize to her? Third young master, let Bai Shui come over first. Since you are apologizing, you should act like you are apologizing. Now that Bai Shui is here, Chu Chi will naturally appear. A hint of darkness flashed across Zhou Yibai's black eyes, but his peripheral vision fell behind Mu Chichi's ear. He remembered that Chuki had a red birthmark behind his ear. If there is one behind Mu Chichi's ear, then Chu Chi and Mu Chichi. He suddenly moved his face closer to Mu Chichi. The man's hot breath brushed across Mu Chichi's cheek. An inexplicable feeling filled Mu Chichi's whole body. She raised her hand involuntarily and slapped Mu Zhou Yibai in the face. Zhou Yibai didn't expect Mu Chichi to attack him. Zhou Yibai's handsome face instantly turned dark after being slapped by Mu Chichi. Mu Chichi. Third master, you're too close to me. Your stench is making me sick. Mu Chichi pretended to be calm and snorted at Zhou Yibai. There was a dark aura on Zhou Yibai's face. He just wanted to see if Mu Chichi was on the 7th day of the Lunar New Year. The meal is ready. If nothing else, I'll go back to Zhou's house. Who told you it's okay? Mu Chichi frowned, sat on the sofa, and faced Zhou Yibai with a bossy attitude. Bring me the food and clean the whole villa for me. Mu Chichi, don't go too far. It would be fine if he was asked to cook, but now he was asked to clean the villa. Zhou Yibai felt that he absolutely could not tolerate this. Muchichi raised her eyebrows and asked, "Why? Don't want to." The third young master forgot about the indentureship I had with him. Zhou Yibai. If third young master doesn't want to do it, he doesn't have to do it. Then just give me all the shares of Zhou Group. Muchichi looked at Zhou Yibai with a half smile and said. Zhou Yibai raised his chin and said sharply, "It's been a week now, and there are only a few days left in a month. Ms. Mu, if you are too arrogant, you will suffer. I'm not afraid of any hardship. The most important thing is that I'm happy." Muchichi tilted her head and said to Zhou Yibai with a smile. Zhou Yi's black eyes were filled with a chilling coldness. The man stared at Muchichi for a long time, then walked away. When Muchichi saw Zhou Yibai picking up the mop and starting to clean, she felt inexplicably irritated. Obviously Zhou Yibai is being bullied by her and doing what old lady Zhou told her to do at the Zhou family, so she should be happy. For some reason, Muchichi felt a little uncomfortable. This feeling made Muchichi feel very bad. "Here, and here, wipe them with your hands." Muchichi suppressed the discomfort in her heart. She pointed to the corner of the table and deliberately made things difficult for Zhou Yibai. There was a cold look on Zhou Yibai's handsome face, but he said nothing. Muchichi looked at Zhou Yibai with a slightly strange look. Why didn't Zhou Yibai resist? What she asked for was excessive. According to Zhou Yibai's temper, he shouldn't be so obedient. Could it be that Zhou Yibai is planning some conspiracy? Zhou Yibai didn't know what Muchichi was thinking at the moment. After he finished cleaning the entire villa according to Muchichi's instructions, he said to Muchichi, "I have finished cleaning the villa according to your instructions. Now you call Chuki. Young master, ask Bai Shui to come over first. Remember, you must look like you are asking for forgiveness when you plead guilty. Otherwise, we will see you in court." Bai Shui's case has become so serious that even if Zhou Yibai hired the best lawyer to defend Bai Shui, he would not be able to protect Bai Shui. Zhou Yibai said with a gloomy and scary expression, "What does Chuki want to apologize for?" "That depends on what you think, third master. What do you think a person who asks for forgiveness should look like?" Muchichi crossed her arms and looked at Zhou Yibai with a cold expression and asked, "Are you Chuki?" Muchichi. Zhou Yibai looked at the woman in front of him, and suddenly moved closer to her, his black eyes flashing with a sharp cold light. Muchichi suddenly felt a chill on her back. She didn't expect Zhou Yibai to suddenly say this. Was there anything about her that made Zhou Yibai suspicious? Muchichi frowned and asked in a cold tone, "Third master, are you drunk?" Zhou Yibai looked at Muchichi's extremely cold face. He seemed to come to his senses suddenly and took a step back. Seeing Zhou Yibai's expression, Muchichi slowly loosened her clenched fists. "If you want Chuchi not to sue Bai Shui, third young master should make Bai Shui kowtow respectfully and admit her mistake. She should also post the video of her kneeling on the internet to clarify everything about how she framed Chuchi, and also." Muchichi's eyes suddenly turned cold as she glanced at Zhou Yibai. "Third master, you have to kneel down too." As a husband, Zhou Yibai did not trust his wife and indulged in love for Bai Shui, which led to Bai Shui's unscrupulous persecution of her. Muchichi asked Zhou Yibai to kneel down and apologize to her. Is this what the seventh day means? Zhou Yibai's handsome face was gloomy as he glanced at Muchichi and asked. Yes, this is what Chuki meant. What's the matter? Third master thinks he did nothing wrong? So he doesn't want to kneel. If that's what she wants, then I will. Zhou Yibai's words left Muchichi stunned. She thought Zhou Yibai would be angry. What on earth is this man playing at? Could it be that he found out that she was framed and felt guilty? Chapter 27. Must we do this? Soon, this idea was denied by Muchichi. Zhou Yibai doesn't have her in his heart, so how could he feel guilty for misunderstanding her? Then bring Bai Shui here. Chuki will be here soon. Muchichi collected her thoughts and gave instructions to Zhou Yibai with an expressionless face. Zhou Yibai said calmly, okay. After Zhou Yibai left, Muchichi fell into deep thought. She always felt something was wrong. How could Zhou Yibai compromise so easily? At this time, at the gate of the Mu family. When Arhua saw Zhou Yibai coming out, he immediately came out and opened the car door for Zhou Yibai. Muchichi's information. After Zhou Yibai got into the car, he said to Arhua. Arhua handed a document to Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai glanced at the content above. After reading it, Zhou Yibai's black eyes flashed with a creepy chill. Except for the blank 3 years ago, the rest of the information is very detailed. Do you know where she went during her 3 years of disappearance? Nothing. Arhua shook his head at Zhou Yibai. If he guessed correctly, the Zhou family must have deliberately concealed the truth, so he couldn't find out what Mu Chichi did during the 3 years she was missing. Ahuo, have you found the information about Chuki? Zhou Yibai raised his chin and asked. Arhua shook his head. There is even less information about the third young lady. Could it be her? Third young master, Miss Mu can't be the third young master's wife. I'm insane. Arhua's words reminded Zhou Yibai. Chuki is ugly and an orphan. Old Lady Zhu let Chuki marry into the family because a fortune teller said that he needed an ugly girl to bring him back to life. Mu Chichi is the eldest daughter of the Mu family. How could she be the same person as Chuki? Is Snow White coming? It will be here in about 3 minutes. Did the third young master really ask the first young madam to kneel down and apologize to Miss Mu? The video is real. There was a chilling coldness on Zhou Yibai's stern face. Arhua nodded. It is real. I have asked someone to identify it. The 7th day. I was wrongly accused. Zhou Yibai leaned back in the chair behind him and said while pinching his temple. Mu Chichi was indeed wronged. The person who wrongly accused Mu Chichi was Bai Shui. Does the third young master like the third young master's mistress? When Arhua finished saying this, he immediately lowered his head, fearing that Zhou Yibai would be angry. Arhua has been with Zhou Yibai for many years, and he can understand Zhou Yibai's thoughts to some extent. When the third young lady divorced him, he seemed to be in a very bad mood and even sent people to look for her. Wasn't he worried that she would regret the impulsive divorce and would not be able to survive in the capital? Who told you I like the 7th day? Zhou Yibai had a cold face and displeasure in his eyes. So, third master likes Miss Mu? Arhua asked again. Mu Chichi. Zhou Yibai thought of the indenture he signed with Mu Chichi for the blood Ganoderma lucidum, and a hint of coldness flashed across his black eyes. After the contract is over, I will teach her how to behave. Yibai. As soon as Zhou Yibai finished speaking, Bai Shui's voice came from outside the car. Zhou Yibai opened the car door and looked at Bai Shui, who looked pale. He asked coldly, "You'll know what to do later." The 7th day framed me. Bai Shui's eyes were red and her face was full of grievance as she sobbed to Zhou Yibai. She thought Zhou Yibai would stand on her side, but who knew that he actually asked her to kneel down and apologize to Chuki? Bai Shui was unwilling to give in. Is this really a frame-up, Snow White? Zhou Yibai looked at Bai Shui sharply and asked. Bai Shui's heart suddenly tightened when she heard this. A trace of guilt flashed through the woman's eyes, but she soon calmed down, bit her lip and choked up as she said to Zhou Yibai, "Yibai, do you believe Chuki now and not me? That's my child. How could I use my own child to frame Chuki? She teamed up with Mu Chichi to harm me. This matter is so big that it must be resolved. Do you want to go to jail?" Zhou Yibai raised his chin and asked Bai Shui with sharp eyes. The word "going to jail" made Bai Shui's face change suddenly. She pinched her palms and shook her head at Zhou Yibai. "I don't want to go to jail, Yibai, you will help me, right? I'm being framed now, don't you care about me?" Bai Shui's eyes were red and she choked up as she spoke to Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai said calmly, "Then apologize to her as Chuki said and clear the charges. You believe in Chuki and not me." Bai Shui pinched her palms, with anger on her face. "You know very well how much impact this incident has brought to the Zhou family. If you don't want to, Chu-Chi will sue you. The evidence she has can put you in jail for 3 years." Zhou Yibai reminded Bai Shui indifferently of her current situation. When Bai Shui heard that she was going to be imprisoned for 3 years, her face instantly turned very ugly. Chuki, this bitch, she actually lost to Chuki. The more Bai Shui thought about it, the angrier she became. "Yibai, I'll listen to you. Please don't abandon me, okay?" Bai Shui hid the viciousness in her eyes, grabbed Zhou Yibai's arm, and choked up at him. Zhou Yibai raised his chin, looked at Bai Shui's pale face, and said in a cold voice, "I won't help you if you do this kind of thing in the future." Bai Shui bit her lip and said, "I was framed by Chu-Chi. Do you think I am a cruel and ruthless person?" The eldest young lady seems to be still reluctant. Zhou Yibai frowned and tried to pull back the arm that Bai Shui was holding, but Mu Chichi's disdainful voice rang out at this time. Zhou Yibai raised his head and looked at Mu Chichi, who was walking over. At this time, Mu Chichi had already dressed up as Chuki. That ugly face looked particularly terrifying in the sunlight. When Bai Shui saw Chuki, there was a gloom in her eyes. "You hurt me, what else do you want from me? Didn't I tell you that we can go directly to the police station?" "It depends on whether Madame Zhu dares to do it." Mu Chichi raised her chin and stared at Bai Shui's face with an extremely evil smile. Bai Shui clenched her fists, with a cold look on her face. "How do you want me to apologize?" The eldest young lady admitted that she harmed me. Mu Chichi raised her chin and asked. "I hurt you, please forgive me." Bai Shui had no other choice at this point and could only apologize to Chu Chi to calm the situation down. "But she won't let Chuki go." "Bitch, just wait for her." "Is this your apology?" "I should have told you, third young master, what I wanted." How could Mu Chichi not know that although Bai Shui said she was apologizing, she was actually unwilling to give in? "This is just a lesson, the real dish will come later." After she said that, she looked at Zhou Yibai. Zhou Yibai asked coldly, "Do we have to do this?" "Then let's go to the police station and explain it clearly." "What do you think, third master?" Mu Chichi didn't give Zhou Yibai any face and asked back with a cold face. Bai Shui looked at Zhou Yibai. Her pitiful appearance was very much like Lin Daiyu. Mu Chichi watched all this with cold eyes, and reminded Zhou Yibai with a curved lip, "If third young master is reluctant, then we will meet in court. I also want to see how powerful a lawyer you can find to protect Bai Shui."